Hello. I'm mainly putting this video on YouTube for archival and nostalgia reasons. I don't intend anybody to actually watch it, but you might want to if you want to. It's the very first stream I ever did on Twitch. It's about 3 hours long. I intended for it to be a stream of me statting up a monster for D&D, but my laptop couldn't handle it. And so we turned it into an Ask Me Anything stream instead. The first 20-ish minutes are mostly just tech issues with me trying to work out whether or not I can do the thing I wanted to do on the stream. And then after that, we resolve to just turn it into me chatting to the chat stream instead. So if you want to skip over to any point that actually gets interesting, I think it probably starts around the 24-minute mark, somewhere around there. Enjoy! Hello! Hello, 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 everybody. I'm very flattered that you would... Oh dear. Frame drops. What's happening? Let me just check this. Well, maybe I can fix this up. Cave Squonk's saying it's fine for them, which is good, because on my end it's saying big red error, saying we're dropping thousands of frames and CPU is about to explode and whatnot. Too handsome, yeah. The computer handle my face. Tell your driver to keep his eyes on the road. Alright, let's see. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Seems good for Jeanette as well. That's good. Well, we shall continue as if it's good then, and hope that it's fine for everybody. Is anybody seeing me as like a complete slideshow? I'm not dropping so many frames that it's unwatchable. Well, that's good. Completely human. Human is what I aim to be. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for coming by to hear me rambling like a madman, as if it's worth listening to. How are we all? Where's everybody popping in from? You all European? I know Ajo's not. Not too handsome. Thanks, Craig. On mobile, it's fine. Interesting. It's the opposite of Ben's problem. Oh, we've got UK, obviously. European, Australia. Very good. Very good. EU. Nice. Scotland. The fancy unicorn, of course, is from Scotland. That's where they get the proud heritage name from. Fantastic, fantastic. Antarctica, yeah, of course you are. FBGX. Yeah, I don't know who's driving you home then, if you're in Antarctica. Thanks, Cave Squonk. It would mean more coming from the actual Scot, but I appreciate it all the same. All right, so let's get started with something that is actually worth doing, I suppose. So thanks for joining me. What I thought could be a cool thing to do would be, I'll get to Welsh, don't worry, Aja. I thought a cool thing to do would be for me to lead you guys through what I do when I'm approaching homebrewing a monster, when I'm creating a new monster. So I have asked for a friend of mine. I think you know him. His name is Ben. I've asked for him to give me a particular monster, and he's given me one of his artworks, and I'm going to turn it into a D&D monster so that we can actually have it fighting them in one of the campaigns. Welsh is a very good accent. I like it. It's very bouncy and musical. Goes up and down all over the place, does Wales. It's beautiful. Dragon is it. I learned to do Welsh when I was a little boy, and I was watching a cartoon. It was called Ivor the Engine. Wales. And, oh, thank you very much for the follow. I should also say thank you very much for everybody who followed me before the stream even started, before I'd actually put out any content. It's very, very nice of you. But yes, when I was a little boy, there was a cartoon called Ivor the Engine, and it was about a steam engine called Ivor, of course, and his driver was a Welshman. And all I remember about it was there was an episode where there was a tiny little dragon who was in the steam engine's actual engine, and so that's the only place it could keep warm enough to actually incubate. And so they were like, oh, what's going wrong with the dragon? What's going on wrong with the engine? And eventually they found out it was a dragon, and somebody said, oh, dragon is it? And so whenever I have to jump into Welsh, in my head I very quickly say, oh, dragon is it? And that jumps me into the accent. Just like when I need to go into Scottish, I just say Scotland, and Scotland just seems to do it. Scotland, and Scotland gets me straight into it. I find that with a lot of places. Irish. I just have to say Ireland, and Ireland gets you into it because it's got that lovely rolled R in the middle. Ireland. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about starting some monsters. So I will jump across to the camera and slightly different. Here is a brewery. That helps you make your own actual. And is the monster. This is the kind of monsters. They all come with a form and create somebody's anybody on the event stream today, which anything that came as jump place. People in the warnings on the internet, they would answer this guy. You could right us. Yes, the internet speech thing. Things going on. Anyway, not. So if I go back to this screen, can you hear me? Can you see me? Is it stuttery? It's better in this screen. Okay. Right, clearer, and you can hear me. All I changed was that I went back to this screen rather than the other screen. So in the other one, it's showing you me and my browser, but the other one you're not able to see it, which is a shame. Oh, is Ben here? Yo, Ben's here. Nice. All right, so that's unfortunate. It seems like we're not able to. Yeah, we're not able to use the other one so that I can't show you what I'm working on. So I'm gonna have to think about a way to get around that. Same issue he had on his sourdough stream. That led to some very, very funny, angry sourdough baking. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I just need to get myself a desktop computer when this lockdown's finally over, then it seems, because I can't be handling it on laptop apparently. To be fair, the it does sound like to explode. Can't handle the fan apparently. So it's trying it. All right, so we might be running into some technical troubles, but we'll do our best. The show must go on. So what I'll do is I will show you, maybe if I have a screen that has, I'll quickly add a layout that has only my browser on it and no camera at all. And then if I need to show you something on the screen, I can switch to that one, and hopefully not having both things running, it might be able to handle one and not the other. So let me quickly make that layout, browser only. And I'll add a screen share. Change that. That's correct. Homebrewery. Thank you. All right. So if you can you hear me now? Can anybody hear me now? Outrageous. Okay, you can hear me fine right now. And is it? And you can see the screen as well. You can hear me. You can hear me. That's good. All right. So most people can hear me. So if you can't hear me, well, you can't hear me saying this, so it doesn't matter. Slight stutters. I will just try to speak slowly and clearly. Do my best. No, it's quite a lot of people as well. Quite a lot of stuttering. So why does it handle? Why can it handle showing my face but not showing my screen? I would have thought that the video was more recent. Damn it. I am using Chrome, Ben. Yes, I am. I only ever use Chrome for anything, and I've heard that that's fine. The frustration is when I did my technical test earlier today with FBGX, I could use both, and it had a little bit of trouble during the transition, but other than that, it was actually watchable. Can I turn down my resolution now? Fancy Unicorn, do you got any suggestions on how I handle my resolutions? I'm not completely new to Twitch, so I'm walking through things. Follow Ben Venler here. Ben is alive, I think it says. How do I change my resolution? Here we go. Resolution bitrate. Drop the bitrate down. As low as it can go. Okay, I've dropped down my bitrate as low as it can go. Hopefully it won't be that. Fancy Unicorn, I hopefully not, because I warned everybody in my flat that I was now streaming, and I gave them a 15-minute notice and then a 10-minute notice, 5-minute notice. So hopefully they've all stopped their internet usage for now. Is there any seeming difference since I dropped the bitrate at all? Is anybody noticing that it's gotten better during with the drop of bitrate, or is it still just as stuttery and unhearable? It's the same for you. This is really frustrating. God. How is everybody today? Yeah, I appreciate that Spidey's to go so that I can look on this more. Jarlsbergs don't do Twitch followers. They'd probably be the best Twitch followers around. All right, if I switch back to this screen, then you can see my face, but you can't see what I'm working on. But the sound and visuals are fine. And so I'm no longer stuttery and awful. Well, awful obviously still, but can't do much about that one. Fine as fine can be. This is blowing my mind then, because earlier I was testing this out. This is the whole reason for the technical test earlier today, was that I had a couple of people watching, and I switched between all the different layouts so that you could see everything. And there was like a 10-second audio cut off every time I switched over, but then it would come back on. Another. Thank you, Mystery White Rock. I appreciate that. Mystery White Rock. I'm not a geologist, so I wouldn't be able to identify that Mystery White Rock. I tested this earlier and it was fine, but it was, I don't know, there was no reason for me to think that it wouldn't work. So I think if anything, then we can either just call it off and try again some other time with perhaps better devices. That might require me waiting until the New Zealand lockdown's over so that I can actually get myself a desktop computer. Or I go ahead with just voice and my face, and potentially maybe I can turn the camera to show you if I really need to show you something. I don't know. What do you think? Would you prefer to see what I'm working on? And so we'll do this some other time when it's still cutting out super bad for Ben. Can I just get a voice, like who cutting out? Can you just let me know who's here right now? It's cutting out for Cave. Starting to cut out for Spidey. And the internet's just not ready for Robert. Yeah, Ben's jinxed you all. It's Ben's fault. Everybody blame Ben. I'm going to have to just give him disadvantage on all of his next rolls. Outrageous, Ben. Outrageous. Everybody's hating on Ben now. Everybody in New Zealand's using the internet. It's 10 o'clock at night. There's nothing else to be doing. If I completely turn off, if I turn back onto my starting soon stream starting soon screen, it's quite a tongue twister. Stream starting soon screen. Then now it's not broadcasting my face. It's not broadcasting anything. It shouldn't have anything. And yes, Spidey, you need to make me some actual nice visuals to use, because I've got nothing here. I'm using defaults and things. It's still saying that the okay. It's still saying that the that I'm dropping a lot of frames, even though there's no. But it's super green. Yeah, and I'm not a graphic designer by any means. I just chose a green and went, green's nice, use that. Audio's fine. That's bizarre. That's really bizarre. it's not working for anybody, but it's saying that I've still got fine speeds, like speeds. It must be a laptop thing, I guess. Maybe my laptop just can't handle it, even though the internet can. Well, I can't. Hey, welcome back, Aftermath. It seems like you've come back to a whole clusterfuck. It's not working, unfortunately. Excuse my French. Yeah, big cutout Spidey. I don't know. I'm gonna have to call it, I think, because it's there's not much else I can do. I don't think the internet speed is still showing as fine. FB's saying it's fine if you refresh. Everybody just try and refresh it then and see if that works. Don't know why that would be an issue. Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate everybody coming on to try and support me. I feel the support all the same. But if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and I just have to wait until I've got a better setup. Unfortunately, unlike Ben and the other VLDL guys, I wasn't a gamer. I wasn't like a streamer before lockdown, so all I have is a tablet and a laptop. A few people are saying it's fine after they refresh, so we can still just talk. I guess if you want to talk about anything, if you want to ask any questions, we can turn it into a Q&A rather than a thing I had planned. I don't know if that's worth your time or not. I understand if it's not. The same problem always. Yeah. Bloody computers, eh? I'm not at all worried about the singularity and the apocalypse that comes from the robots taking over the world. Can't even bloody can't do the things that you actually want them to do. You're gonna hang around until I abandon ship. Thanks, Cave Squant. I appreciate the support. I really do. It means a lot to me that you guys actually care about what I do and appreciate it. I put a lot of work into this. A lot of work. And I just hope that it's for an entertainment. Well, if I use these things down as I can. Was the sorry, FBGX. I shall add that now. Camera and socials. Nope. Yeah, there we go. Text add. Text. FBGX is the bomb. I think it was something along those lines, wasn't it? Yeah. Just for those who don't know, FBGX is a very good friend of mine, IRL, and is one of the players in one of my home campaigns. She plays a half orc called Grid, or Gredil Mendez. I actually play with Spidey as well in a campaign or two. I DM a game for Spidey, in which he plays a barbarian. No, not a barbarian in that one. Sorry, a druid in that one. An old man who's a druid called Rex. And he's very sort of flustery, and he kind of talks like this, Rex. It's a very fun character. Oh, here's some behind the scenes for you. I don't know if any of you have actually. I don't know if any of you have watched my 2 YouTube videos that I put out with intention to make more. But I did sort of a Team Trees, jumped on that bandwagon and did a video about Team Trees, but in a D&D sort of twist on it. And then after the second one, I was like, oh, I'm going to make my next video about the Tarask, which for those who don't know, the Tarrasque in D&D is like the biggest, baddest monster that you can possibly ever throw at your party. It is said to be the hardest monster of the game. It is basically Godzilla. It's super armored, and it can hit like a truck with its claws and its feet and a heck of a lot of things. But the problem is, it's kind of crap. So it's got all this lore about how it's super crazy big and powerful and stuff, but it's just naff. And reading it, I could tell as a dungeon master, I was like, this isn't going to be that hard to take down. So for my third video, the next video on the channel, what I had done was that I put together a party of level 20 characters, level 20 being the highest level you can actually get to in D&D. And I put together 4 level 20 characters, one of which was FBGX and one of which was Spidey NZ, and another 2 good friends of mine. And I got them all to roll up level 20 characters, and then I just ran a game and I recorded the whole game. And I showed, like, I didn't tell them what to do, I didn't direct him, we just actually played a game as it would play out. And it went for, like, what would you guys say, like, how long was it, 3 hours, 4 hours or something to take this guy down? And then afterwards I was like, so what do you think? Was it actually worth being such a dangerous monster, blah blah blah. And all 4 of them were kind of like, it was a tough fight, but it wasn't, super bad. It didn't really deserve the reputation it had. And then I was editing it together after the fact to make the video, and I was like, the footage was kind of crap. It's like I don't have a lot of great quality cameras and things. I don't have a budget for, or an entire crew like the VLDL guys. Obviously, I was just kind of filming it on my own camera on my tripod and stuff. So I was doing my best, but it was not the greatest footage. So I thought, I don't really want to put this out. But what I do want to do is that I grabbed the stats for the Tarrasque, and I made it what I thought it actually deserved to be. I gave it all kinds of other things. I gave it a sonic screech that could stun all kinds of players around it and all that sort of things. If you're ever interested, maybe I'll put it up somewhere that you guys can have a look at. But I made it like super over the top. And then I had them play the exact same fighters again with the exact same stats and abilities and things, and fight in the same situation, but they were fighting an entirely different monster now. And FBGX and Spidey, what do you guys think about the second fight? Was that a tough challenge? Was it an interesting one? Did you find that one much harder? It was way better. It was much better from my end as well. It was much more interesting to be fighting something that could do more things. One of my favorite things that I gave it was a regeneration that took into account the type of damage it was being dealt, so that it forced them to adapt the way that they were fighting it during the fight. So with the Tarrasque as written, it's just got a whole bunch of hit points, and you just hack at it with something until it goes down. Effectively, it's got nothing. It's got no ranged attacks. So if you've got a flying party member, they can just fly and shoot arrows at it or whatever. But this thing, not only did it have a ranged attack with, like, it could throw rocks and rubbles and things, but it had layer attacks. It could, like, affect the ground around it. It could make acid rain, and it could make earthquakes and turn mud into hardened rock, so that you'd get stuck in the ground and stuff. But yeah, my favorite thing about it was that if they did a bunch of piercing damage to it, after it took, I can't remember how much exactly, but let's say 80 piercing damage total, then it. Oh, thank you very much for the follow, Leah or Liazar. After it took a bunch of piercing damage, I described its skin as now adapting to it as it was starting to harden in the places that it was getting pierced, and so now it had resistance to piercing damage, and it only took half damage from piercing. and after it took a certain amount of piercing damage more, it was now completely immune to piercing damage, and they had to start slashing at it, or start doing fire damage or acid damage or psychic damage or all sorts of things. And so it was a lot more fun that way, at least for me anyway. So the problem was, we then filmed that whole session as well. So now we filmed 2 whole sessions about these same 4 characters fighting the Tarrasque. I got home, I downloaded all of the files onto my computer, opened them up to start editing. Every single one of them corrupt. So I lost the whole thing. Several hours of filming for that one. So that was fun, and it's the reason why I haven't put out any other videos since my second video. I've been meaning to, and I since then I keep meaning to put out a 3rd video saying, hey, I know it's been a long time since my last video, but here's the reasons why. But then the lockdown happened, and I'm still studying as well, and blah 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 blah. So I appreciate the support. I appreciate all of you that are subscribed to me on YouTube. It is my intention to start up again, to start doing the videos again as soon as possible. But I am doing full-time study at the same time as well, and so it's difficult, but I'll get there eventually. And with your support, it makes it much more viable an option for me to focus more time on my more time on my actual YouTube and my stories and things. So it means a lot. But this is my last semester. I'm in my last semester of my my maths degree. As of June, hopefully, all going well. As of June, I'll be graduating with a bachelor in applied mathematics. My second bachelor. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Performing Arts from an acting college down in Wellington, and a Bachelor in Science now as well. So kind of utilising both sides of the brain, if that was still a thing that was agreed upon in science. It's kind of been debunked, that left brain, right brain stuff now. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. It's even more exciting to think that I'll get to the end of a math degree and then seemingly not actually do anything with it. Just become a professional dungeon master instead. You have multiple bachelors as well. What do you do, Veritas? Veritas Paradox. What are your bachelors in? I'll get to that after math. Maybe one conversation at a time. But I'll give you a clue. I'm up from round here, like when I first moved out to New Zealand, I spoke more like this. Honours in Arts and a Bachelor of Nursing. Oh, cool. Very cool. Another sort of mixture that we don't often see together, arts and medicine. Fancy Unicorn, why did I want to do a maths degree? I wanted to not do acting anymore, effectively. I studied acting pretty much all my life. Still struggling through my first bachelor's. I gave it into mechanical engineering. I don't envy you. Yeah, I studied acting my whole life, really. It was the only thing that I showed interest in as a boy, and my mum was like latched onto it. She was like, "Oh, thank God, he's finally got something interesting." It's all northern to me. Yeah, but which side of the Pennines, mate? You got to get that right. Oh, you could give me some real offence if you give me the wrong colour rose. Yeah, so I studied acting. I went to drama school. By the time I got to like 16 in the UK, you don't have to do. Well, I'm trying to get like a universal way of saying it. In the UK, they call it GCSEs at level 11, year 11, when you're like 16 years old or so. You need to do those, and then you don't have to do your A levels or your AS levels. You don't have to do anything from like 17, 18 onwards. There's not compulsory education. So by that point, I wanted to do acting already. And so I said, I'm not going to stay on and do high school for the last 2 years. I'm going to do a proper acting diploma, because I know that's what I want to do. So I gave up the maths and the science and the everything else, and I just focused full-time on the acting for 2 years. And then thank you very much, Lee. I appreciate the compliment. 2 degrees in astrophysics. Ooh, blimey heck. Is that you, Fancy Unicorn? 2 degrees. Or did I miss somebody else in? They've got 2 degrees. Yeah, I diploma and continued into acting, and then I very smart unicorn. Yeah, the neck. Yeah, 2 degree astrophysics. I wanted to do physics when I first started university. So I graduated diploma degree in acting and was like, "Yay! Do you want to see a piece of paper that says I can act? No? Oh, that's not actually worth anything then? No, it's not. It's worth the experience, but not actually the piece of paper. Because when you go to an audition, they want to see what you can actually do. They don't want to see what you studied. So I continued performing for a while, making a living as an actor. I had a few things in small things here and there and everywhere. Nothing really major, just like a support role in this or a cast member in the odd TV show or whatever. And then after like 6 or 7 years out of drama school of doing this, I was like, I can't be doing this anymore. Since I turned it into a career, it's not fun anymore. I can't be doing this schmoozing and networking and all this sort of falsehoods, like having to go to the theatre to be seen going to the theatre, even if it's not a play you're interested in. You just have to be seen by the right people that you are going to the theatre, and all of this. And I was like, it's not for me. And so I recognised at that point that back at high school I had always been quite academically minded. I'd always been naturally good at maths. So I went back to university and thought, I'll get something more useful, quote unquote. Let me just catch up with this. Jeanette says, it's true, I stopped Archie because I was working as an Archie and couldn't juggle the two. Ended up in engineering. And we've got some smart peoples here. Very smart peoples. Very cool. Yeah, so I went back to uni. I chose at that point that I wanted to do a Bachelor of Science. I didn't know what level to pitch myself at because I hadn't done anything since. Oh, thank goodness, Spidey's here to bring everybody's average IQ back down again. That's a joke. Spidey's actually a very intelligent person. Yeah, so I didn't know what level to pitch myself at, so I went to do, I did a bit of everything. I did an astrophysics paper, I did physics, I did maths, I did chemistry, biology, a bit of zoology, just all of the sciences, everything that they offered at Auckland University. And one by one, I kind of dropped them aside until I realised that it was going to be physics or maths. And I got to the point where the physics just got too hard and I wasn't enjoying the challenge of it, whereas the maths was probably equally hard, but I enjoyed the challenges of sorting it out. And now I'm at the end of a maths degree. That's kind of my story. And as I say, we've got another 2 cents. Thank you very much. Here's my 2 cents for you. I appreciate the follow. Yeah, so I'm at the end of a maths degree and looking more and more likely by the day that I could actually turn my complete passion of dungeon mastering and storytelling into an actual viable career, because I'm making it work and I've got a bunch of avenues through which I earn money through DMing. I do on a Sunday. Well, not always a Sunday, but it has been a Sunday for a while. I do dungeon mastering for kids with sort of special needs. People, they're usually on the autism spectrum disorder spectrum. You know what I'm trying to say. It's late night here in New Zealand. So I do that on a Sunday. On evenings, I DM for, well, when we're not in lockdown, on an evening I will DM for people at like work events for Spidey's work. He put me in touch with a bunch of people at his workplace that all wanted to try D&D, and so I tried that with a bunch of them. then obviously there's the VLDL stuff. They pay me to do that, thankfully. So it's getting very enjoyable. And then if I can make streaming work, if I can never get a bloody computer that will actually allow me to do it, this would be another avenue of income where I could get paid for doing my hobby. So yeah, so I really appreciate the support from you all. It really does mean a lot. It means that I've found something that I am good at, good enough that people would want to watch. Yeah, Aftermath. I am a professional DM because I suppose to be a professional, the Watcher follow. Ooh, the Watcher is lurking. Thank you for watching, Watcher. And Eddie88, I can't think of a play on words around that. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for coming. And his mum and double. Gotta make sure I read that correct. Double salute. Almost missed a letter there. Thank you, double salute. And thank you to his mum for watching me too. So what was I saying? Yeah, I pay to be a player in one of my campaigns. Well, I mean, one day maybe I'll be able to, if I've got a decent computer, if I ever manage to get myself something that's not a bloody laptop and actually works, then maybe I'll be able to set up online games and like put it open to the public to say like first come first serve, play in a one shot with me or whatever. So I'm hoping that will be an avenue of stream. 6 more follows. What does that mean? 6 more. Oh, have we had 6 more people come in? Have I missed anybody? 2 cents, Liaison, Mystery White Rock. No, I think I called out all these people. Nearly 50. Oh, right, 50 because I need to get to 50 for my affiliate status. That's right. I don't know if you ever worked out what my clues were, Aftermath, but I'm from Yorkshire. Oh, Lorquin. That sounds familiar. Is that from a thing? Oh no, I'm thinking of Lorquin. Lorquin was from. Can't remember what fantasy that was from. Welcome, Watcher. I shall fill you in. I was having trouble with. I was having trouble with the laptop. I think it might be a laptop situation. Don't destroy the magic. I'm not allowed to talk about the issues we were having because it jinxes it. Nathan the Real 5. Thank you, Nathan, for the follow. I really appreciate that. It's kind of it's north of Kent. Yeah. Can I get Mordor She Wrote? I love that. That's a great name. Thank you very much for the follow, Mordor She Wrote. It's pretty. What's the best way to learn D&D? I want to, but I don't know anyone who plays. That's a great question. Gives me something I can actually talk about instead of rambling about myself for a while. So let me explain how I got into D&D, and that might help you. So I got into D&D, as nerdy as D&D is. I got into it in the usual sort of nerdy route into D&D through doing hip hop. Obviously, because I'm sure if you poll most people who at a D&D convention, they'd say, "Oh yeah, we're going through hip hop, obviously." So I was doing a hip hop class that was led by an actor that I'd worked with on a particular program, and he was a phenomenal dancer. Oscar, can't remember if I remember his last name right now. It's been a few years. Oscar something, and he led this hip hop dance for actors specifically. And so I went along to that for a bit of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed sort of hip hop dancing. No, that would have been amazing. Oscar Knightley as a hip hop dancer. Anyway, I went along to that, and afterwards we would have like a kind of social session after the actual dancing session, and so we would sort of sit around. Would bring a shared kai. Sorry, that's tereo for food. Kai is food. So we'd have a shared lunch, and we'd just chat about what happened that week and how we were feeling and all the rest of it. And one of the guys, after a few weeks, sort of slipped almost that he was a dungeon master, and that's what he did as a hobby. He enjoyed that, and then we all were like, "Oh, that's cool. Tell us a bit about it." And he was like, yeah, I don't usually bring it out in conversation to begin with because it's kind of, a little bit stigma around it and stuff. It's still seen as a bit of nerdy. This was back in like 2005, no, 2015 or something. So I didn't really think much else of it. I was like, cool. And then later on, like maybe a few months later, I was watching some tabletop. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's an old YouTube series. I think it's finished now, which is why I say old. It was a series with Will Wheaton, who he just like plays board games with a bunch of celebrity friends of his, and describes how to play the game and things. It's a really fun series if you enjoy board games. So I was watching one of them, and he had Alan Tudyk on. Hopefully, I don't need to explain who Alan Tudyk is. If you don't know, then Google him. He's a fantastic actor. And they were playing some sort of role-playing game. It wasn't D&D, but it was something similar. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching them because they were all actors. They were all having a good time with it. They were all having a hell of a lot of fun. And I was like, I think that might be some like what D&D is like. I think that's what Dungeons and Dragons is. It's something like that. And I remembered what's too soon. What have I missed? Made D&D cool. And so what was I saying? I got in touch with the guy who said he was a dungeon master. And I said, hey, any chance that you could play a game with me? I want to see what it's like. And so eventually around to put a game together. And it was like taking heroin, and you know how they say that for some people, the first time you take some of those hard drugs, it's like an instant hooked. Some people apparently it takes a little longer to hook them, but for me it was like oof, straight on. I was hooked on it. I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. But unfortunately he didn't play it again. He was busy with acting things, and I kept like pestering him. Hey, should we play again? That'd be great. And no, it never happened. Audio's chopping again. Oh dear. Ajo was introduced to it from a musical comedy group called Tripod. A whole musical based on D&D. That's awesome. That sounds fun. There was a similar thing here, Ajo, recently in straight in the vein. That's right. Recently we had the New Zealand Comedy Festival right before the lockdown was. It was like in February-ish time. And there's a fantastic board game cafe near me called Cakes and Ladders. I'm really good friends with the owners there, and they hosted this sort of improv comedy that was based around D&D and in the world of D&D and stuff. I didn't get to go to it because I was busy with math assignments and stuff, but I saw the pictures. It was amazing. Have you ever tried LARP? No, I haven't. Not yet. If it's on YouTube, yeah, I'd love to see that, Ajo. Yeah, LARPing. I've done lots of stunt work as an actor. I have some stunt friends, and I had a really good friend down in Wellington, Jamie Smith, and me and him were mutual friends with a stunt coordinator, Alan. Why am I forgetting his last name? But yeah, it's been a while. And between us all, we had a bunch of like swords and weapons and things from being stunts, but obviously like fake ones for stunt work. And occasionally we would go out to a field and just like have slow motion fights. It was really fun, but you just had to commit to the thing. So if you saw a thing coming, you had to commit to the actual speed of the event and just take it. You could like block it if you could, but if it was too fast, you couldn't suddenly speed up to block it. You just had to take it and then go down to the ground. It was a lot of fun. I imagine LARPing is similar, but in actual speed with things that don't hurt as much as wooden swords. So yeah, I would like to try LARPing eventually, but it's taken a long time for my fiance to get okay with me being a professional dungeon master. She doesn't understand the game nor play the game, so I think if I then told her I was going to start LARPing as well, that would be a step too far maybe. I feel like I was talking about something before Aftermath asked me that, and I can't remember what it was. The LARPing weapons. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, and it definitely would be my kind of fun. It would, yeah, after the marriage case when it's too late. I'm gonna put it in my vows. through sickness and in health, through all the nerdy shit that I can get up to. I was talking about how I got into D&D. Thank you. Yes. So I went along to this same board game cafe I was just talking about, Cakes and Ladders, and they had they had feature Fridays where they would just put on a game, and like people who didn't necessarily have a bunch of friends to get together on that evening could just come and play the game together and make new friends that way. So I did that. I met some new friends through Cakes and Ladders. Till death saves us. Till death saves do us part. Nice, lady. Most of LARP is about the out-of-combat stuff until the players are no longer progressing and the GM just sends bandits in with the required items to punch them in the head. Hey, you're not going anywhere. It sounds like DMing. I stand there until I realise that they're just squabbling in the tavern and not actually getting anywhere, and then I send in a eunuch to progress the story. So Cakes and Ladders, it's a great one. Yeah, there's one in, I think, Toronto called Snakes and Lattes, and there's of course that it doesn't work quite as much in America, because I think in America they call the game Shoots and Ladders, not Cakes and Ladders. But anyway, I went along to Cakes and Ladders. I met some wonderful friends. My closest friends now are the people I've met through Cakes and Ladders. One of them started D&Ding. This is like several months after I actually played for the first time, and so there's some happy to play D&D. I eventually found it in my friends, and we've been playing ever since. What is gross FB? What did I do? I don't know what I did that was gross. Such good friends. Yeah. Oh, my gross friends. So I got into it that way. And I was a player at first. Somebody else was DMing for me, and then after about 7 or so sessions, as is his wont, he got bored of it and asked me to step up, because I was the most enthused about it. I'd actually gone and read the player's handbook and everything. And he was like, this guy might be the one to take over. And so I bought the monster manual and whatever. So all of that was I'm now remembering was a very long rambling way of explaining how to get into D&D. And it wasn't probably that useful at all. So now let me give you a better, actually more useful breakdown on how to get into D&D. Number one, the first thing you need to know is it is not. Yes, I was in a couple of the board series videos. I was stealing some headphones. If only I actually got to keep those SteelSeries Arctic Pro headphones that I stole in the video, because bloody hell, these ones are all falling apart. They're terrible things. To get into D&D, you do not need anything. So you can literally play it with only your imagination and nothing other than some way of randomly generating a number, because there has to be some form of random generation to keep the story going in a way that none of you are quite expecting. So you don't need the books, you don't need a DM screen, you don't even need to be in person. Obviously, if you've got some way of communicating over long distances, like we're doing on Thursday mornings for the stream. Even dice. If you people who can D in prison, dice are not allowed, and they will with pieces of paper that just have written on, or they'll make their own spinners or whatever, or they'll carve soap into rough dice shapes, whatever. Some way of randomly generated numbers. Obviously, dice are, as FBGX says, very fun. Dice are very fun and quite addictive. So if I show you my dice, I've got a bag here, and I've got a bunch more upstairs as well. Some metal ones that were sent to us after the Avernus stream by a bunch of guys called Critical Hit Collectibles. They were very, very nice to just send us some free metal dice. I need a dice tray. Yeah, if only somebody was to make me a dice tray for my birthday. That was a joke, because Circus Assassin has, I believe, made me one, and that it's waiting to be delivered because of the lockdown. So you don't need anything. However, anything that you do have is a bonus. If you can get dice, get some dice. What you do need, the dice that are most important are obviously the D20, which is the 20-sided dice. The set is called they're called polyhedral dice, which is just a maths term meaning it's many-sided. So the D20 is the 20-sided dice. It is the most often used. It is pretty much everything else. With a D20, you can simulate a D10 because obviously 10 is a factor of 20. So you can just take the number and halve it and round up, and you've got a D10. You can simulate a D5 by quartering the number and rounding up, or you can simulate a D4 by taking a fifth of the number and blah, blah, blah. So you don't need any other dice than a D20. This is the most important one. But if you are going out to buy dice, you'll most often find that they come in a set of 7 polyhedral dice, which is your D20, a D10, which is a 10-sided dice, the 0 representing a 10. Usually you'll get a D4, which is like a little tetrahedron, a little 4-sided dice here. And those have 2 different styles. There's this style, where you can see that the number you're rolling is actually on the bottom. And then there's this style, which is the number you're rolling is on the top. Personally, I prefer this style because most dice you roll, the number are on the top. D60s are not necessary, but they are fun to roll. They continue to roll because they're basically spheres. That is so much math. It's not math. It's not math. You're just rolling a dice and picking the number that comes out on top. Hey, Cave Squonk, I just read that the other way around, and instead of I lost all my dice to my brother, I heard I lost my brother to dice, and I was like, holy shit, what just happened? Did your brother get like completely crushed by your weight in dice or something? Also in the polyhedral dice, you'll get a D12, which is a 12-sided dice, a dodecahedron. This one's an icosahedron. What else have I not said yet? You'll get a D6, obviously. You're all familiar with D6. That's a Monopoly dice. That is a 6-sided cube. And I think the one that I am missing is I'm missing the D8, of course. I haven't mentioned the D8, which is, of course, an 8-sided dice. It's an octahedron with 8 on it, somewhere on there. And finally, you'll get a percentile dice. So this is the one that's not always in a set of dice. So when you are buying a dice set, consider whether it's a set of 7 or a set of 6. If it's a set of 6, it's the ones that I've just explained. But if it's a set of 7, it will also contain a percentile die, they call this. So you'll see that these ones are all 10s or equivalent. I think is that backwards for you guys? I think it's backwards for you guys. It's backwards for me as well. That's a 20 zeros. Yeah. And so what you do is if you need to roll 1 in 100 things, like if you're rolling a percent chance, then you roll the D10 and the percentile together. And I got a 20 and a 9, which would mean 29. Simple as that. So those are the dice that you would need to play. So you would get you can get all kinds of dice, Cave Squonk. You can get a bunch of all sorts of things. You can get D60s and D120s and all sorts of different things. It's worth noting though that of the dice that I've shown you, only the D4, D6, D12, and D20, only those ones are mathematically perfect, mathematically fair. They are the what's the word for it now? The Platonic solids. So those are the only 5 Platonic solids, meaning that every side on them. Let me demonstrate it. It's probably easier than explaining it. If I look at this corner here, it's adjacent to 3 different edges, and if I faces, sorry, 3 different faces and 3 different edges. Is that how you use that? I've always wondered why you wouldn't use a D10 for percentiles. Yeah, you can use both percentiles. I mean, you can use both of them as you don't need a percentile. You can just use 2 D10s. So for instance, if I have this D10 and this D10, neither of them have the double digits on, but ahead of the roll, I just need to select one of them as being the tens column and saying this is my tens column, this is my, because otherwise I roll this and I've got a 1 and a 7, and then after the fact I can go, oh, is that a 71 or a 17? Baby throwing up, Griff. Spidey's throwing up because I'm talking about maths. But I'm talking about dice, and that's important. So if one corner is adjacent to all three edges, regardless of which corner I'm looking at. The same with a D12. One corner is adjacent to three edges, regardless of which corner I'm looking at. Same for a D20, a D4, blah, blah, blah. They're all adjacent to the same number of edges. But if I look at a D10, this is not a platonic solid, because if I'm looking at this corner here, it's adjacent to 5 edges. But if I'm looking at an edge on the side, a corner on the side, it's only adjacent to 3 edges. So it's not mathematically fair. Like, realistically, it's still fair. It's still going to roll one of the sides a tenth of the time. Oh, Wangadan. Thank you very much, Wangadan. Oh, shoot, is it a raid? Oh, I've got my first raid. Crazy. Incoming, Holmium. Thank you for the follow, Holmium. And Kiming20. Thank you for the follow. 153, what? How is he? What is he? What am I doing? I ain't ready for this stuff. I'm just talking. Nobody's ready for this. Yeah, everybody's bye. See you after the spam. It's a raid. 2 cents. Thank you for the follow, Yamifra and Drebsdorf. Thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow. DS18 and Continuum Cat and Riley Burke. Thank you, Riley. I remember you from the Discord chat. Thank you, IC4421 and Arathian NZ. This is just crazy stuff. Way more popular than you, Spidey. I'm sorry, man. Hey, my popularity will rub off on you, right? Trickle down popularity economics. Thank you, Double Salute. Thank you, Raymain. Thank you, Selfino. Thank you, Flynn Gaiden. Miss Arathian NZ as well. Thank you, Arathian. Thank you, Aladus, or Ale Deuce. I'll have an Ale Deuce. I'll have 2 of them. Can I have an Ale Deuce? 1. IC44. How did that happen? Why is that shown up twice? Thank you, Rowan, for the. Thank you for the raid, Rowan. You're crazy. I followed earlier. Thank you, Georag, for following earlier and missing it. Oh, Rowan, what's up? Oh, then it tells me it's a raid after the fact. Thank you, Rowan. I appreciate that crazy raid. Unfortunately, my laptop seemingly can't handle the showing the things that I was planning to do with Ben's monster, and so we have turned this into a question and answer, talk about D&D general thing. Have a good evening, Rowan. Thank you very much for that. Can't sub yet. I know, right? We'll get there. Don't worry about it. Thank you, Fancy Unicorn. More Rob streams to come. Don't worry. I just need to get a situation where I've got the ability to actually stream without it bloody working, without it breaking anything, and then I can. I might miss some things in that for a second. Again, when I'm less distracted. But Fawn Crera, I think I called it, because it's part of the no, same broke the stream. Who's brain dead, Alfian? What you talking about? Talking about Willis. Very briefly. I'm gonna show you the home brewery that I created. So I give it because the state of the legs. The strength, the giant crab and the octopus combined, quite a lot of body strength by the way they do it. The stream rate is way low. I took it down as I could possibly try and deal with the to deal with the situation I was having, and it didn't seem to help much. This can actually look. So again, I totally do this here. Thanks, Arathian. I appreciate the bullshit. Thank you, Arathian. It's not actually the problem with the net. It's a problem with the. It's a problem with my laptop, I think, not the net. I appreciate your overly aggressive comments, though. Very unconstructive. So everybody, refresh your page because that apparently helps with the lagging for some reason. And then I've just put in the link to the Fawn Crabber if you actually want to see it yourself. I don't know how to ban people yet. Don't worry about it. I can do that later if necessary. Oh, sorry to hurt your feelings. Oh. Anyway, so what was I talking about before that raid happened? It was crazy. They are an asshole, I know. Everybody knows they're an asshole, but don't worry about it. They're just looking for attention. Click on his name and click ban. Is that how you do it? Everything chat's moving so bloody fast. So. All right, bye, Arathian. More about how to learn D&D. Yes, that's thank you. So we were talking about dice. Thank you for the reminder. So if you want to get into D&D, probably get some dice. They're pretty cheap. You can get them for like pittance. You can pick them up from all over the place, any sort of gaming store. The next thing that you should invest in if you want to, you can probably find it online for free if you want. Thank you, Spidey. I shall see you later. You made for my stream while I was streaming. Happy to do some badges and emojis. Thanks, Radio Spidey. I really appreciate you, man. If anybody here is not yet following Spidey, make sure you go and do so. He's a very, very talented artist, and he helps me out a lot. He's a tremendous, tremendous friend. Very generous with his time and his money and his patience and his effort and everything. Very, very nice guy. So go and check out Spidey's channel as well and subscribe and whatnot. So the next thing to do is you can probably find it online for free if you look hard enough, I imagine. But it is definitely worth the money to purchase a player's handbook if you're going to be getting into the game. This is everything you need to know. This is if you have one of this, you don't need anything else, and you can start playing immediately. I'm glad thank you, Parlogix, maybe. Parlogix. Thank you, Parlogix. I appreciate that you found my stream as well. Thank you, Fancy Unicorn, for putting Spidey's thing in the chat as well. So if you need to head over and do that now. What was I saying? Find this has got everything inside it. So it's called the Player's Handbook for a reason, because the players can actually read this one. It's designed so that the players can read it. And it tells you, yeah, D&D beginner tip, don't choose a caster. Magic is complicated in this system. It is very complicated. You do get used to it. And as long as you've got a who reminds you of books, then material made out of just about anywhere. Can't be colored. You can have metal dice, you can have wooden dice, you can have plastic dice or resin dice, all sorts of things. You can buy them from anywhere. The cheapest ones are obviously the resin ones, but the cheaper you go, the more likelihood that there is like faint discrepancies within them, and so they're not 100% fair. If they've got bubbles within inside them, then they won't quite be fair. They're usually good enough for the purposes, because if you roll them 1,000 times, maybe you'll notice that the 16 comes up only half as often as it should or something. But Usually most dice you'll get are really suitable for the job. But this player's handbook is designed to be used by the players. So it starts off with an introduction to worlds and just the game in general. And then the first part of it is all about creating a character. So it walks you through it. So you can pick your race. So you pick your dwarf, elf, human, halfling, whatever, dragonborn, tiefling, whatever, warforged. Probably not on your first go, but on your first go, these ones are the ones to go for. And then after you've picked your race, you pick your class. Do you want to be slow and do you want to be kind of sneaky and stealthy? Then maybe you want to be a rogue or a ranger. Do you want to just hit things with a hammer as hard as you can? Then maybe you want to be a barbarian or a fighter. Do you want to be a healer and helping people and jumping around the battlefield doing clerical magic? Then maybe you want to be a paladin or a cleric. And so on. There's about 13 different classes now that you choose from. And then after that, you choose a background. You think about where did your character come from? What were they doing before this? Why are they an adventurer now? Why are they slightly above a common person in terms of fighting ability and killing monsters? Why would the tavern owner turn to you instead of that guy to ask you to clear out his rat problem in his cellar? Were you an outlander and you've just been wandering the lands, or maybe you were a... Yes, always good point, Leah. Always check with your DM if they have banned any classes or races or what have you, because in a specific campaign, maybe they don't. Maybe there's a reason that in their world, elves and dwarves have been at war for thousands of years, and they're setting this campaign in the elven lands, and so you can't play a dwarf. Because if you did, your character would just be killed on sight or something. So you should always ask the DM, like, hey, I'm thinking of playing this class and this race. Is that going to be fun? Always ask them for like the setting as well. Like, is it a high fantasy setting? Is it a low fantasy setting? Is it a sci-fi setting? Because D&D is like a default is set in like a fantasy world, where it doesn't have to be. And so yeah, always check with your DM. It's good general advice. So yeah, getting into D&D is as easy as that. It's much easier to start as a player than to start as a DM. It's much easier to find someone who already plays and just make a character and join their game. They'll tell you what it does. So, I mean, nothing is, especially as a DM, Leah, nothing is ever wasted. No preparation is ever wasted. So, for instance, I assume most of you have been watching the Isolation games. Maybe I'm wrong to assume that, but in the previous episode, Barb had started off the episode with a sword in her gut, because that was the cliffhanger we'd left the last campaign on, the last episode on. And so we started off with a fight, and I was fully prepared for her to die, because I knew that the character 21 was specifically trying to kill Barb for reasons that we haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, I was for my perspective of playing 21. I was going to try and kill Barb the best that I can. I was going to use all of his abilities to try and kill Barb, and so I had to be ready for her to die. I had to be ready to think this character might perish, and what then happens? What do I do then? I can't let Britt just sit there for the rest of the session doing nothing. So I had to come up with some stuff. So I had a bunch of preparation for if she did die, what happens. I had her in like the afterlife doing things and stuff, and eventually stuff happened. I won't go into it in case it gets used again, because that's my point. Nothing's ever wasted. No preparation is ever wasted. So that's a long roundabout way of saying, in reply to Leah's comment, it can suck to create a character with a huge rich backstory that you're really excited to play, and then take it to your DM and they say you can't play a dark elf in this campaign because dark elves only ever live underground, whatever. But then you just put that on the back burner, you create another character, and then in another campaign further down the line, you use that character, or you flesh it out more in the meantime, whatever. And from my perspective as a DM, I always have that thing happens. For instance, if in this fight that's coming up on this Thursday, sorry, Thursday for New Zealand time, I don't know if Wednesday for you guys probably. This fight that's coming up with the jackals that they're about to fight in the woods. If Barb happens to die in that, then I've got this other preparation done. Let me just scroll up the chat a little bit. I feel like I was missing some things. can you make your own maps on the site? I think that was maybe not directed at me, but you can make maps on the site that I'm using for Roll20 if it was directed at me. Can't wait for the next episode. Thank you very much. Me neither. Britt thinks you don't like her. I love Britt. She's great. She's fun to play with. She gave me the most to work with as she gave me the most by giving me the least. When I asked for all of their backstories, I asked them to create the characters. I gave them complete full reign. I said no characters or races are off limit. You can play whatever you want. And so they were. Alan was talking about playing a Loxodon, which is a relatively new race that was created for 5e. That's basically an elephant person. They are large. They're enormous, like even bigger than Torok, and they have elephant heads, but they're bipedal and blah blah blah. So it's talking about all these different races. And then I asked them all for the backstories, and Britt was the one who sent me like half a paragraph. It basically just said, "Jason Bourne amnesia?" ? And that was about it. So I was like, all right. I mean, that's as much as you want to go into it. That's fine. I'm not going to force them to come up with this creative backstory if it's not really their shtick. But also that's kind of a gift for a DM because it means that I get full reign to flesh out the rest of it. And so I decided how old she is and how long it was before she woke up on this pirate ship and blah blah blah, all this backstory for her. And she doesn't know that, and it gives me the ability to then make that the main plot of the story. So if you're speaking to Britt again, Fangadan, tell her that I like her just as much as the others. There was a very good reason that 21 stabbed her that hopefully will come out in the next episode. He was specifically programmed to do so. Anne D. I don't know anyone who plays, so my sister and I will be learning together. Some friends. That's the best way to learn. Really, is to just play with each other. Because another good thing about it. In fact, I think it might be rule 0 of the book. Let me see if it specifically says it. Pretty sure it says somewhere here rule 0. Maybe not. It's in here somewhere. I know it is. It's just not. It's not got the heading, so it must be as part of the one of the paragraphs must say it. But basically, rule 0 is the DM's always right. So like these rules are just guidelines, and if you want to change something in your world, you can. Now that's not to say that the DM should be a dick about it and like change rules on the fly. You have to have some sort of consistency because otherwise it's not fun to play. But if you're all learning the game together and nobody's ever played before, then the best thing to do is to not bog yourself down with rules. Somebody should read as much as they can about it, as much as they're willing to about the rules and how they work and how movement works and how combat works. But at a certain point, just start playing, and then something will come up. Somebody will say, "Can I run over there and use my action to chop the skeleton's head off, and then throw the skeleton's head at the other skeleton to try and break his ribs?" And then the DM just has to make a rule. They have to say that you can turn to the book and say, "Oh, can you do that? I don't know. What would that be?" Technically, that would be 2 actions, I think. But or you can say, "I'll say that you can do that if you succeed on a athletics check of DC 15." And then you make a note. This is the important part. You make a ruling at the time. You just make something up. You say something that happens so that the game can keep moving. But you also make a note in a little jotter at the side of you that says, "Look this up later," so that when it comes up again in future, you've got a ruling on it. You actually know how the rule is. I'd probably have to be the DM. I have a rough road ahead of me to learn how to DM. That's right. You do have a rough road ahead. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Being DM is a tough job. But if you are a creative... Oh, I've got a... Who's that? Barbizon. Thank you very much for the... I really appreciate your support. Yeah, being DM is not easy, but it's really rewarding. And if you're the type who... Oh, I've got another one. Thank you very much, and DQ. If you're the type of person who enjoys knowing secrets, then DM is like, oh, it's so tasty, because I've got so much going on in the background all the time, and to see your players almost touch on something that will uncover a plot that you've been building up for ages, it's so just, and then they miss a clue that you've given off different, and you're like, oh. It's really fun to have someone else in any way related to the campaign and confide to say, hey, this is what they did. They came so close to covering that thing on your last time. I should catch up with the chat. D&D is not first time, but it's worth it if you put in the time. Like always, Barb, who might die and no one else. She gets herself into trouble. I mean, it's not completely by design. Can anyone else subscribe or tip this man? Not giving me the option. No, Holy Heretic, I am not yet even affiliated, let alone partner or anything. So this is my very first stream in Twitch ever. And so I need to have streamed for 7 days and 500 minutes total in order to get affiliate status. And that's when you can subscribe and do the things that I'm still getting familiar with. Tip for everyone: the more you watch videos and streams about people gaming, the easier you will roll into it. That is true. Oh, that is perfect. Thank you, Paologix, for reminding me. Another great way of getting into D&D is to watch people playing D&D, and I cannot support enough the people at Critical Role. It's probably not the first time you're hearing about it for people who have already got interest in D&D, but if this is your introduction to it, you should definitely check them out. They're called Critical Role, ROLE, because role playing, play on words, and they are a bunch of voice actors. And so because they're voice actors, they know about telling a story, they know about taking on a character, and you see, and to watch them playing out long form. I should warn you, every episode, it comes out like once a week, and every episode is about 3 hours long. A lot of people have it on in the background while they're doing other things, unless you're a nerd like me and put it on double speed and just watch the whole thing. But yeah, it's fantastic to watch them, because when I was still getting into D&D, I was watching Critical Role, and then every time they used a spell, I would pause it and I would look up what the spell is and how it works and what it actually does. And then I would be the annoying asshole in the comments that was like, actually, it doesn't work like that. You forgot that blah, 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 blah. And then I very quickly, well, maybe not as quickly as I should have, but I eventually learned it doesn't matter. Like, it's not about that. You use the if lightning bolt is meant to only go 60 feet, but the monster's 80 feet away, and you think it's the cool way to kill the bad guy, then let it happen. It's frustrating. It's fine. Needs to reach something. So blah, blah, blah. Do you prefer less fleshed out character stories over detailed ones? Yeah, it's a GM preference. I always give my new players the option to be as detailed as they want to be. I say to all of them, hey, give me your backstory. Tell me about this character. Who are you? Tell me about your family tree. Tell me about where you grew up. Tell me about this and this and this. Whatever, however much detail you want to go into, give me it all. Anything you don't give me, I will make up. And that's that's the sort of disclaimer I give to everyone. I say, you don't need to make up something about your character, like your mum's name. Then you need to make up your mum's name. And so if they give me nothing, then I can make up everything. And if they give me everything, then I can make up nothing. Blah, blah, blah. You can bombard with love. Yeah, you can hold on to your love and your bits and your money and give me it all in however long when I can actually receive it all. Did they pick up 21's ruined sword? I'm going to say that yes, they did, because in the heat of the moment, maybe they forgot to mention it. But in the reality of the situation, if you're picking up his entire corpse and his cloak and everything, you're not just going to leave a very well-made sword there. So I'm going to say that Barb, since she was looking at it, I'm going to say she. Send a love emoji, blah blah blah. I once had a boss that rolled 2 natural ones. He tripped and KO'd himself on a sheathed sword. There's a lot of debate in the D&D world about whether you should penalize a nat 1 in that way. 2 nat 1s, that's only a 1 in 400 chance. So yeah, I would definitely penalize that. I probably wouldn't KO himself because it's my boss and I want it to be good. I DM'd for 8 years, Holy Heretic. That's cool. Online would be fun. Anyone here? Tabletop. Thank you, Rob. I'm so much more encouraged about learning now. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it, Andy. Valaros. When did you start to DM? I started to DM, I want to say 4 years now. 4 years, I think. September. It was definitely September. And I'm pretty sure it's coming up to somewhere around 4 years. but I got super into it, super deep, and so I put in like 7 years of experience into those 4 years. By the way, Rob, do you ever work with visual items playing it online? For example, the currency. I noticed that for me, I really like that visual aspect of that. Let me just double check it, what you mean by that. Do I ever work with visual items when not playing it online? Oh, right. So do I ever like hand out proper currency when we're playing an in-game thing? I definitely use visual items. I don't. For any of you people who are patrons to Viva La Dirt League, you might be able to access the very first game that we ever played together before the Avernus campaign. Spidey NZ put me in touch with Viva La Dirt League and said, I think it would be good for your channel to play D&D, and I know a guy who's pretty good at it. And so we just played in Adam's lounge, and we recorded it, and it was very fun. It was entirely homebrew. It was us set in the world of Azerim. I made the map and everything because it was before they'd kind of fleshed out the lore of the world. I made like a whole sort of one-shot arc. It was really fun to play. And for that, I had all sorts of handout cards and things. And I think they put up on there, you can actually find it if you head over to my Instagram account. You can see a bunch of the pictures of just like some of the handouts and visual items that I did use for that campaign. I don't use currency, but occasionally I use, or I intend to, start using healing potions and things, so I can actually hand them a little bottle of something red when they buy a healing potion. It's still intimidating. I can imagine it would be so true if they do something you're like thinking, be careful. Even a tiny peak of, even just my tiny peak of 21 was so tasty. That was really fun. When I saw Ajo's phenomenal work, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check her out on Instagram. Derrison, isn't it? DERRISON. Feel free to link your Instagram, Ajo, if you want. If you haven't checked it out, it's amazing. Fantastic work of all of the characters. And I was like, can you do one of my characters? And she said, yeah, sure. And so I knew that Ajo was coming, 21 was coming up in the next episode. And so I said, okay, here's a bit about it. Here's what I'm willing to tell you about them. They're actually a robot. They're wearing a wooden mask underneath the green scarf, blah, 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 blah. Make sure it doesn't have the tourmaline that 14 does. Make sure it does have a spiral conch shell thing like Zaza's, blah, blah, blah. And it was very fun to be kind of like sharing a secret with somebody. Brit is so much like how I was when I first started pen and paper roleplays. In what way, Cave's gone? You're really creative on this game. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You taught me a couple of things when I was watching you up. I like you more than Critical Role. Oh, well, that's high praise indeed. Speaking of the people at Critical Role, actually, this weekend is going to be relatively tough for me because this weekend coming is or was D&D Live, which is an annual Dungeons and Dragons convention that the Wizards of the Coast, the people who publish D&D, they make this convention every year, and they announce new things, the new direction that D&D is going, and all the rest of it. And they have Critical Role. They have Dimension 20, which is another one that you should watch. It's phenomenal. It's college humor. You probably all have heard of college humor. It's Brennan Lee Mulligan as the dungeon master. It's very fun. Very different style to Critical Role. Usually a little bit shorter episodes. Very, very funny. They have those guys. They have the Adventure Zone people. They have a bunch of other like professional Dungeons and Dragons people. And they invited us this year. The Wizards of the Coast got in touch with Viva La Dirt League and said, would you like to come out? All expenses paid, flight to Chicago, attend D&D Live, you meet all of these people, potentially even play with them, blah, blah, blah. And I was like hyperventilating. I don't get starstruck. Like as an actor, I've met quite a few big names. I've literally touched my nose to Sir Ian McKellen in a greeting that is native to New Zealand called a hongi. Where you sort of clasp hands and touch foreheads and noses and breathe in the other person's spirit and all of that sort of thing. And I greeted Sir Ian McKellen with a hongi once while I was at drama school. I don't get starstruck. I'm used to being around people, but the prospect of meeting Matt Mercer and the rest of the Critical Role people, I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then very thankfully for my own sanity, only like two days after that, I realized, oh, this is going to get cancelled. There's a lot of things starting to get cancelled It was early on in the COVID nonsense, and I went, yeah, this is not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up. And like 2 weeks later, they said, yeah, it's cancelled. So that would be this weekend, and I would have been meeting my heroes. But they do say don't meet your heroes, so maybe it's a a good thing. Maybe they're all assholes. Shout out Fancy Unicorn. What's the YouTube link there? Whatever you put in the YouTube there. If it was for me to watch, then send me it as a private message on some service or another, on Discord or whatever. Because if I open it now, it'll make everybody shit the bed. Victor was a masterpiece. That is definitely correct. Details are the essence of role-playing. I've never played before. I played with Rob, so my backstory was so minimal. I was uncomfortable with role-playing. It was a delight to have such a backstory. I've made it so great. FBGX, if you give me the permission, I will tell them a little bit about your character and a little bit about Grid and the backstory and whatnot, and how I went about fleshing that out. I've literally just started, but I think my character might be a bit too complicated. If you're just starting, then I'd say try and go a little bit easy, just so you're not going you're not giving yourself too much. It's my noob choices. Yeah. another thing to remember. Sorry that I want to answer everybody, and it means that you keep chatting and I keep missing you. So I'm probably answering things like 20 minutes after you ask them. Another cool thing to keep in mind when you're starting out is that if you're starting at level 1, which is not always a given, like I started these guys for the isolation games at level 2. For the Avernus campaign, I started them at level 4. Because I wanted them to have something that they could actually do and they weren't just useless. But if you are starting at level 1, remember that you're level 1 and you have very little you can do on your turn. And so a difficult thing to do is like, oh, I've got this backstory where I was the hero of an army. I was a sole warrior and I was leading this entire battalion and I killed all the orcs and then all my battalion got slaughtered and I finished the job and blah. And then you walk into the tavern and you get killed by a giant rat. Like it's not going to fly. Like where's the discrepancy there? So you got to think, I'm a level 1, so maybe when I'm thinking about my backstory, I was the hero of my particular village because when the orcs raided, there were like 12 orcs, and between us all, we whittled them down to 2, and then those 2 ran away, and I ran after them and killed them. And that would be sufficient to be like, yeah, and that would be why the people of your town think of you as an adventurer. Much love for you. Keep it up. We'll support you. Thank you, Holy Heretic. It means a lot. It really does. I went for Caster. Ooh, Caster as a first one. Magic is difficult. We can get into that later if you still want to talk about it. Certainly fleshed out that Insta today. Yes, I did. Yeah, I realized that I was going to be potentially putting it up here, so I was like, oh, I should actually go back through all of my photos and put some on Instagram. I'm not too active on Instagram and Twitter, but it's a good way to get in touch with me, I guess. Mordor, she wrote, I have to go. Sorry, Mordor, I didn't say bye before you had to leave, but thank you very much for coming. Palagix, goodbye, Mordor. Heroes, put her Instagram there, that's good. First of all, thank you for answering all my questions, Rob. Stupid question that you probably get asked a lot. Stupid answer then. But will you ever consider playing D&D with random people? Yes, I did answer this a little bit before, where I said that perhaps when I get a computer that can handle online streaming and whatnot, one avenue of revenue for me as a professional dungeon master might be to open it up to, like, if I ever start my own Patreon or something, maybe I can say, hey, first come, first served, who wants to play a one-shot? So that could be a thing I would like. That was the weekend. Oof, I don't know what that... Oh, yeah, the weekend thing was... Yeah. You could have met Matt Mercer. I know, right? It's probably for the best that I didn't. I'd have peed myself. When I first started, I was very quiet naturally and not very creative. Like, I had no backstory. I made silly decisions, not realizing they'd have consequences. Some campaigns don't have consequences for their silly decisions. Like, another thing that I do as a DM, whenever I'm starting a campaign, I always send my party 2 things to fill out, 2 surveys. One of the survey is called Consent in Gaming, and it's something I came across earlier this year, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. It's a basic form that lists off a bunch of, like, well-known potential areas of conflict. So like there's an entire section on romance, and it says there's like different boxes. I'm completely okay with this being included in any way, shape, or form. I'm okay with this being included, but I'd prefer to be consulted about it, or I don't want this even hinted at off screen or whatever. And there's things like sexual encounters between non-player characters, sexual encounters between a player character and a player character, rape, this, that, the other, kissing, this, romance, and it lists things. And the people that I'm playing with, I don't ever want to be two in the game. Then it goes the same again for like spiders, blood, gore, eye, all sorts of things. And it lists all these different things: religion, homophobia, blah, blah, blah. And so I send this to my players that I'm about to start playing with, and I get them to fill it out, and then I know, okay, they don't want this sort of thing alluded to. And you might think that it goes without saying, surely why would we talk about rape or whatever? But if you want to run a world that's like super realistic, so to speak, and it's got a lot of verisimilitude to it, then half orcs, they come about as a product of an orc and another creature. And if you read the lore on orcs, they don't get along with other races too much. So it doesn't outrightly say it in the books, but it's heavily implied that they come about as a product of rape. And so in my world, half orcs are usually products of rape, but I don't necessarily have to bring that up or allude to it or even explicitly say it. I hope. I mean, FBGX can correct me if I'm wrong, but I hope that I've done so nicely with her character, who is a half orc. The way that I tackled it was tasteful and sort of hinted at without being obvious. And so that's the first form that I send them, and then the second form I send them is a survey of like, what do you want out of a game? Do you? It's like a sliding scale. Do you want it to be silly, romp, consequence-free, kind of like The Simpsons, where anything can happen in this episode, and it doesn't really affect what happens in the next episode? Or on the other end of that scale, I want it to be like Game of Thrones, like it's high stakes. It's really consequent. Everything that happens for a reason, and it leads on to the next thing. And they can put anywhere on that sliding scale. I want this kind of game from it. And then the next thing might be, how interested are you in acquiring wealth for your character? Like, is your character, are you the type of player who likes to treasure hunt? Do you want items and gold and this and that and the other, or do you not care about having that as one of your driving motivations for your character? And it asks a bunch of things I'm forgetting now, like are you interested in noir-esque mysteries? Are you interested in murder mysteries like whodunit? And I get this sort of interest from them. And this is, oh, hello, Palagix. Thank you very much for following. I thought you already had. Never mind. Thank you for following again. All that's to say that to Cave Squonk, you can play in games that aren't they don't have to have consequences. You can kill the merchant that you're talking to because he's not giving you a good enough deal on the sword, and laugh it off, no problem. But you need to know that going into the game. That's another thing you need to talk to about your DM before you start playing. Like, what sort of game do we want to play here? Do we want a game where I can just like blow off steam because I have a hard time at work every day, and when I'm playing I just want to relax and pretend to get pissed drinking ale in a tavern with tavern wenches and all of this? Or do I want it to be that if I ever steal something, then there's a chance that the next session takes place in prison because my character's in prison now? You'd sit back and watch it unfold. Once I was dead, I was dead. Yeah, that's not good. You're my hero. Who's your hero, FBGX? I probably hyperventilated. I forgot to meet you in the field. Well, Leah, I can say now I am just a regular dude. I'm not famous. Like, you guys know me, and I'm famous among this crowd. But I'm not, like, if you ever meet me, absolutely feel free to come and say hey, because I don't see myself as famous. Yeah, it wasn't fun. That's what happens when you're the younger sister and play with your brother's friends. It's still fun, you know. Yeah, I can agree more with that statement. It was a link to the Critical Role. Critical Role YouTube. Thank you, Fancy Unicorn. Yes, everybody else, go and check that link out. It was great. But do it after this. Orcs are friends. Yes, go ahead, Rob. Okay, so I can show off Mike's grid. Oh, yes, I can. Actually have it right here. So Mike, Spidey NZ, sorry, he surprised me one year. What had just happened? Something shit. I was having a shitty time. Was it? Oh, it was after my gallbladder exploded. I was taken into hospital. Like it was my sixth. No, it can't have been the sixth. Seventh. It was like my 7th anniversary with my fiance, and we went to the movies and dinner and whatnot. And then when I got home, I was feeling a little bit sick, a little bit nauseous, and it was not a good time. Like I was like, it got to the point where I was like, I think I've got food poisoning or something. But we literally shared the same food over dinner. And then I started just hurling, vomiting in the toilet and stuff. And then it went on and on and on all night, and I was in crippling pain. It was like, you know that horrible pain that you get when you're retching and you've already vomited everything out. There's literally nothing else to do, so you're dry retching, and it feels like your body's trying to turn itself inside out. It was that kind of pain all night. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced. And eventually she said, we need to get you to the hospital. And it turned out I had pancreatitis caused by gallstones. A gallstone had gotten stuck in the bile duct and forced and made my pancreas start to eat itself. So it was not a good time. I ended up in the hospital for about 10 days, lost about 5 kilos or something in a week, which is not great. So I was not having a great time. After I got released, my friends, one of my friends was like acting a little bit weird, like suspicious, trying to set up a time for me to come and meet him at Cakes and Ladders and play some board games. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm down to play. Why is it so important that we meet at this particular time? And it wasn't until I got there that all my friends came out from the back room and whatnot, and surprised me with having they had all individually hired Mike, the animator Spidey NZ. They'd all commissioned their own characters in my game as proper drawings. So for instance, I've got a really good friend, Tima, who is playing a warlock, a human warlock, very charming fella. And then there is a very good friend of mine, Joel, who is playing a human fighter. He's very brash, and he's very young, and he's very headstrong. His name is Lagan, and he's kind of based on Gurren Lagann, the anime. And so when he told me that when he was originally making his character, I went, okay, so that's the sort of thing that's the sort of story he wants to play. And I went and watched the entirety of Gurren Lagann. I was never really into anime before that, but I watched the whole thing, and I was like, okay, this is the kind of story that maybe we can follow, or the story elements at least that I can pluck out, and he will enjoy that kind of story. I will skip over this one, come back to it. This one is an elf druid called Seed, a good friend of mine called James, who actually owns Cakes and Ladders. He's playing Seed. And then this is a good friend called Curtis. Joel, and I actually for a year had a podcast about anime. The kind of gimmick was that Joel is a real weeb, and he was introducing me to anime who knew nothing about it, and Curtis was kind of the middleman. Curtis is playing a tiefling, as you can probably tell from the horns and the devilish kind of look and the tail, the thin tail, and he's a paladin. So he's one of these tieflings who's like, I'm actually a good guy, don't hate me because I look evil. Chat's probably getting way ahead of me at this point, sorry you guys. This is the entire other campaign. I could go on another tangent here, I probably won't. I'll try not. But basically these all started as one campaign, and I was like, I can't handle 7 people anymore, and so I orchestrated a split at some point in the story, and just continued running 2 concurrent stories within the same world. And so this is a Dragonborn, a good friend of mine called Dominique. She's playing a Dragonborn paladin. A good friend of mine called Christy. She's playing a half dwarf. I actually created my own half races. So that, in the player's handbook, you can only be a half elf or a half orc. There's no other half races, but I created my own. So she's a half human, half dwarf. A friend of mine who lives back in the US now. She moved back to the US, called Tess. She was playing I think she was a ranger. Is she a ranger or a rogue? No, she was a ranger, and she's training to be a rogue now. She's playing an elven rogue. And then a friend of mine, Tim, who is playing a sorcerer, a human sorcerer. So they surprised me with these amazing drawings that Mike had done, all in the same sort of style, so that they were all in the same world. and I was just blown away. I'd never been so touched by friends before in my life. So unbeknownst to them, I got in touch with Mike and said, "Hey, can you do me a commission in the same style of one of my main NPCs in that world?" Actually, this guy's a warlock and it's his patron, and this guy's a druid, and he was basically raised by this character. He's an archfey called the Merry Gentleman, and this is him, the Merry Gentleman. So they now adorn my DM screen. So all that was to say that Grid, the one I was meant to get back to. Grid, this is FBGX's character. She's a half-orc monk. And when Tals started the character, she didn't really give me much, as she said earlier. There wasn't a lot of. She was kind of new to it. She gave me this sort of backstory about like, oh, I'm a monk and maybe I'm good with calligraphy supplies, and I grew up in a monastery, I guess, because with me being a monk. And so I came up with the monastery, and I was like, okay, maybe it's an island monastery where orphans are sent, people who are like raised by. Because I'd already had in mind that a half orc was probably the product of something not nice. They would most likely die in childbirth, because not only is it the Middle Ages, but also you're giving birth to a baby that's part orc, and orcs are enormous creatures. So it's probably not good for the mums. Most mums, most human females in my world would die in childbirth if they were ever impregnated by orcs. So I was like, okay, this is maybe going to be a backstory, and then she was taken as an orphan, raised by an adoptive father, and taught how to be a monk, and then I fleshed out that story, and that gave me a reason to flesh out where the island was, and who would be a father, and blah blah blah. Then later on, Naren joined the team, Curtis's character, and he also was what was he? I think he gave me something. He said like, oh, maybe I'm an orphan or something, and I was like, oh, well, I know where orphans go in this world, especially monstrous ones. And so I then introduced him to the monastery and reintroduced, like, I reworked all of Grid's backstory so that she had grown up with being childhood friends with her new traveling companion. So it was very fun. That actually, just as a very quick side note, that's another tip for a DM and players actually. It's really enticing to make an edgelord character who wants to be like, oh, I don't get along with people and blah blah blah. But you've got to ask yourself, why are you getting along with these people? Because out of necessity, you are an adventuring party with these people, and you are going to spend however long, like years in game, and potentially years out of game, like with these characters. So you have to come up with a reason for why your character is an edgelord to other people, but for some reason likes to stay around with these guys. And so I usually ask the players not only to create the characters, but to come up with some reason as to why do you guys know each other? Why have you been traveling together for a week now? Or why do you get along? What do you see in each other that you enjoy? Orcs are friends, not food. All right, back to the chat to try and catch up. Yeah, they just had a time with orcs. So my game with FBGX is unfortunately on hiatus at the moment with studies and whatnot. But they just had Velaros. Thank you, Velaros Zero. Valoros. Yeah, they just had an entire arc fighting orcs in the mountains. Hopefully trying to find Grid's dad along the way, because she knows that she was obviously has an orc as a father, but she doesn't know who he is or where he is, or if he's even alive. But she does get dreams from time to time, prophetic dreams, like you've seen in the isolation games. I enjoy making dreams. And so she's seen her dad in dreams, and she's pretty sure that that she hasn't seen him yet, or at least maybe that's news to you, FB, but you haven't seen him yet. Level 1 sucks. Our DM had to do half damage for weeks. That's right. So that's another home rule that I use, Lorquin. When they're level 1, I make sure that they're max health, and then when they go to level 2, I automatically give them max health. Unfortunately, that was a thing that I introduced after my home games. But for any games that I start now, I always max health for the first 2 levels, just so that I can. Because it helps me out. It helps them out because nobody wants to play a character that's got like 7 hit points and they get killed by a falling rock. But also, nobody as the DM wants to. I don't want to have to pull my punches. I don't want to throw only goblins at you for like 12 years. I want to start getting into the interesting monsters that actually do some damage. Some DMs, you're level 1, right? The city is poisoned and burning. There are 5 dragons over, and you wanted all of the world. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some DMs are like, oh yeah, so you're studying. Oh yeah, I guess this is happening. Go. And they're like, what? But have you balanced this? Have you balanced this for us to actually win it? And then the DM has to go, oh, I guess I'll pull back during the fight, and then it becomes really obvious that they're fudging rolls and stuff. In our first fight, 3 out of the 4 of the party got knocked out and we were on our death saving throws while the other one hit. Yeah, I got a character that I'm playing in one of my friends' campaigns called Tig. He's a tiny little forest gnome, and I didn't put anything into Constitution, and so I've not got a lot of hit points. But I started with 8, and then at level 2 I rolled for new hit points and I got a 1. And so now I've only got 9. Okay, I suppose I'm only level 2, no big deal. And then at level 3, I rolled another 1. And so the DM said, you can roll that again. And so, you guessed it, rolled another 1. And at that point I went, I guess the dice want this guy to be squishy. That's fine, I'll roll with it. We'll say that that's the story that this dice is telling. And if this guy dies, then it wasn't meant to be. But it does inform the way that I play the guy, because now he has to be a ranged rogue instead of being up there and stabbing things like I was kind of intending him to be. He's standing at the back and stabbing things with there was a fight we had recently that was quite dangerous. There was a lot of orcs fighting all at once. And a lot of my friends went down in the battle surrounded by orcs. And I was like, I have a healing potion. I could run up and try and save one of them, but put myself in the middle of the orcs and I would definitely go down round, and then the person I just healed would also go down. Or I can play as my character would and be like, I'm going to have to get into a position where I can run if I have to, because I want to play as a team player, but strategically, like you've got to kind of balance. I want to have fun, and I'm actually playing a game here, but also I want to play like what my character would do in the moment. And he loves these people; they've saved his life on numerous times, but also he doesn't want to die. And so I put myself into a position where I could escape if I had to. I could just run away. Everyone always seems frustrated when he's not the center of attention. No comment. Did you want to die? I might have tweeted you some fan art. Some of these things out of context. That's a unicorn. Did you want to die? Out of context of a D&D session. Might be misconstrued. I might have tweeted you some fan art. Episode 3 of Isolation Games. Excellent. I look forward to seeing that. Maybe I'll look it up. Oh, no, I won't distract myself too much more. I need to catch up with the chat. Our characters are far too squishy. Yeah, that's right. There's things you can do about being squishy. Like the DM can decide these guys are not going down easy, so maybe I'll give them some magic items that offer them some protection. Maybe I'll give a character that they're going to defeat a cloak of displacement or something that gives disattacking them if they actually use it. Others that can make you and so you might squish party member him again. I mean, in the world, there's a youth and humans that have marriages that are. I know that in the setting, of D&D, there's a lot of different worlds within D&D that have been published and whatnot. In the Eberron one, which is where the Warforged come from, in that world, I think the orcs are not quite as feared. They're not quite as marauding bandits with stupid minds and just lust for rape and pillage. And so in that setting, I think it wouldn't be unusual to have a half-orc that comes from a happy home with a orc mother and a human father or whatever. Oh, Skylu. Thank you, Skylu. I appreciate the follow. It means a lot. Holy Heretic. The consent form is super smart and it helps you feel this. Yeah, exactly. It does help me know what things are and aren't okay to include. Like, I might not think twice about describing an arrow piercing through someone's eye and you see the vitreous fluid? No, that's not right. Aqueous fluid? I can't remember. It's been a while since I've done human anatomy. You see the fluid burst from their eye and blah, blah, blah. Is that bringing back memories, FBGX? I think twice about describing that. until I've asked these people ahead of time, what sort of thing are you completely squeamish about, or not just squeamish, but what do you flatly refuse to entertain at your table? And if they've put down that they've got a phobia of anything to do with eyes, then I won't do that. Now you mention it, Rob, the rape. It once happened in a D&D campaign I was playing as a player. A lot of DMs have got horror stories about, or a lot of players have got horror stories about playing at a table they really shouldn't be playing at because the DM was clearly just acting out a sick fantasy of their own or whatever, and not listening to the table and what's needed. The player which happened to felt highly uncomfortable. Yeah, that's rule number one. You stop that. This is a game and people are playing and to enjoy themselves. You do not entertain stuff for your own sick needs. Would two half-orcs make another half-orc? Because I'm somewhat of a zoologist, I worked at a zoo for 6 years, and I've always been fascinated with the animal kingdom. In my world, any half race is actually infertile, because they are effectively the same as a liger or a tigon or a mule or a zedonk. All of these real life animals where two species have mated. So a liger is a male lion and a female tiger, and because they are two different species of cat, they are closely related. They're still in the same family, both Panthera leo and Panthera tigris. They're both very closely related, and so they can breed, but the offspring, because they are different species, is always infertile, with very few exceptions, like sometimes a mule can be fertile. But a mule is a horse and a donkey, same story. So in my world, orcs and humans are close enough that they can successfully make an offspring, but the offspring is always going to be infertile. Obviously, this is a world of magic as well. So, for instance, the guy who was based on the anime character, he has a childhood friend in his backstory. He fleshed out his backstory quite a lot. It was quite enjoyable to go through it with him and like talk about who was his childhood bully and stuff like that. He has a childhood friend whose father is a quarter gnome, I think. And so somewhere along the line, someone obviously had a human and a gnome mating, and that child would have been infertile. But I decided that because gnomes are inherently magical, they would have had some arcane know-how as to being like how to work out how to make this work, how to make you fertile again with magic. Which actually reminds me, I don't know if it'll come up, especially not in next session, but just for interest, for fleshing out the world's sake, in the isolation games, Prince Zaza, his second cousin is the heir to the throne, Prince Zozo. Rowan's naming, not mine. Prince Zozo his father is the king, and he is a homosexual in a homosexual relationship. And Prince Zozo is actually the biological son of both of them, because it's the first time that it's not the first time it's been attempted, but it is the first time that it has been successful, that the arcane wizards and mages of the land have been able to take DNA from both men and externally grow a viable human, viable elf in his case. And so that, on top of the fact that he's as far as he knows, he's heir to the throne and only child, it gives him a real superiority complex. Trigger sheet sounds so damn good. I'm glad to have given you guys all that idea. You can find them online as well. You don't have to create your own. I think they're just called consent in gaming. Yeah, you're right. I will definitely keep that in mind when searching for a game. I'll talk to the DM about how things work. Yeah, usually Cave Spunk people call it a session zero. It's like the session before the session. Hey, Fancy Unicorn, how you doing? Trigger sheet. I think I'm way behind. I don't even know if I'm talking to anyone at this stage. Like everybody could just be gone, and I'm just reading these things. Oh no, Elminster's still here at least. Thanks, Elminster. I appreciate the support. It seems very accurate. If I'm playing a game and having fun, I might not deal with heavy subjects. It's not that they're triggering. Yeah. It might not be that you, in your own life, care about talking. You don't care about I don't know, torture. You can talk to anybody about torture. It doesn't matter. But in a game that's lighthearted, you might not want to play out a scene where somebody's getting tortured. I have played out scenes where people get tortured, both as the DM and the player before, and it can be quite fun. as long as both of you are okay with it. Depends on the recessive dominant genes. Fancy they could be quarter op. Yes, interesting. You should say that, Laura Quinn. I don't know if you saw it on my very brief window before that I put up on my all the things that I've homebrewed. But I have a thing there called half races, and I've decided you can decide in my world I'm going to be a quarter orc and a quarter this, or I'm going to be a half orc and a half this, or I'm going to be a half dwarf and a half gnome, or I'm going to be this and that and the other. And I've different stats for you depending on whether you choose the dominant trait or the recessive trait. You are our celebrity. You're famous for us, and we love you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sorry you had to go through that. Was that when I was talking about my exploding body? Pain of having gallbladder issues. Yeah, that's right. Wasn't enjoyable, but hey, it was a while ago now. You're dealing with it now. Ooh, holy heretic! Damn. Got internet connection at your hospital. Oh, awesome. What a great surprise. I am so glad it had to happen. Yeah, that's right. It's very strong. Thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words. They're very sweet of them. I have amazing friends. I really do have amazing friends. Another example of my amazing friends is that last year was my big 3-0. I've just turned 31, so last April was my 30th, and for that I knew I wanted to do something D&D related, obviously, because I'm a one note pony, one trick pony. One note. And so I created an entire day, a huge day's events, where we were basically testing our real world stats. Like if we were in the game of D&D, what would our stats be? And so I had like strength things, so there were like push-up competitions and press-ups and like throwing and athletics things, javelin kind of stuff. We were meant to be doing archery, that never happened, but never mind. We were doing dexterity-based things, like I had a tightrope that people could walk along, or there was like, can you make a house of cards with very dexterous, nimble fingers and sleight of hand? There was that sleight of hand was a fun one, because I'd made like a little credits card thing that I put in my top pocket, and then I put another one in my back pocket, and on the card it said, "Congratulations, you get a stealth point" or something. Now give this back to Robert. And so throughout the day, if anybody could pickpocket me, they would get proficiency with sleight of hand or stealth or whatever it was. Stealth was the stealthies. We called them stealthies, because to test your stealth, you had to take a selfie and it had to have somebody else in it, at least 3/4 face, and they had to not notice you taking the selfie. And then at the end of the day, everybody sent me the pictures. And not only was it a great way of making sure that the whole day was documented and I actually had decent photos of it, but also like I could then just count the pictures and see how many people they managed to get stealthies with. And if they did get caught, they lost a point in stealth, but the other person gained a point in perception, I think, because they obviously saw it happening. I've got a great picture of one of my friends, Tima, who's on the tightrope. And he's like pointing at me, but without looking at me, because he can see me at the corner of his eye trying to do it while he's distracted on the tightrope, and he's pointing at me. It's fantastic. So there were all sorts of things. To test constitution, I had like an eating competition where we had like a little shot glass, and at round one it just started easy. It was like chocolate milk and something salty, I think, maybe like bits of breadcrumb or something. I can't remember. And if you eat that, fine, no worries. And then if you survive that, you go into round two, where it's the exact same mixture, but now we had some soy sauce, or now we had some whatever, something sour maybe, I don't know. And it got to like round 6, where there was just everything just put into this thing. It was gross and awful, and there were like 4 of us had made it all the way through it by then, and so we got the highest constitution, and everybody else got lower. It was very fun. It was an entire day. It could have been an entire week. Like I had so many ideas that we never got around to doing, because it was just so much to pack into a day. But it was a very fun way to. I don't even remember why I got talking about that. That was just to mention how amazing my friends were. Yeah, I had like 30 people or something all turned up to help me celebrate my birthday. It's fantastic. 6 posing options, right? Oh, really? I don't think I knew that. So when they were FBGX is saying when they were commissioning the drawings, Mike was giving them all sorts of different options for their characters. Don't be a Rowan and hate all the other party members. Yeah. Rowan does role play his role so very well. Like it took a while for I have to play deals. I don't know if you'll probably notice in the coming one. It's a lot. We're going to go back to the actual property that we're right now. We've already the first. The first will probably be like the first 8 episodes or something. We'll film the first session. We need to do the green screen work for it or whatever. But the big difference for that one in the DM style is going to be that I don't have a time limit. So for Avernus, it was a sponsored thing. I needed to get a story told from beginning to end. I needed to tell pretty much an entire one of these books because Descent into Avernus is like one of these books. I needed to tell the entire story in the space of 6 episodes, 8 episodes, whatever it happened to be, which was all filmed on the same day at the same time. And so it was just like one single session. It was a 6-hour session. And so that's why I had to keep it moving. And a lot of the comments were like, oh, he's steamrolling you too much. Shit, DM, blah, blah. But I had to. It was out of necessity. And then with this one, the isolation games, we knew it was going to be 4 episodes from right before we even started. And so I had to tell a story beginning to end. At least this time, I didn't have to tell a specific story. I could choose the story to tell. But with the big difference you'll hopefully see in the upcoming one is that there's no end in sight. We're just playing until we don't want to play anymore, or until you guys stop watching. And so I'm letting them meander more, and it's really fucking with Rowan especially, but a lot of the others as well. They've told me in no uncertain terms, we want you to railroad us. We don't like this sandbox situation because we don't know what to do. We don't have a call to action. We don't, like in my home games. I step back. I create the world. I know what's going on in what places. I've got all sorts of plot hooks going on, but they choose where to go, which can get a little tricky for me in prep wise. For instance, in FPGX's campaign, they literally chose their next direction with the toss of a coin at the end of the last session, and so thankfully they did it at the end of the last session, so I at least know which direction they are going to go. But I have to have the world created, and they decide which ones they're interested in, which areas they're interested in exploring, which is fantastic. But the VLDL guys have told me they don't want that. They want me to sort of drive the story, which is fine. It's a different style of playing. But I am letting them give them a little bit more room in this upcoming session. And so Rowan, as playing Bodger, he was like, "Why would I go and do this?" And I was like, "If you feel like you wouldn't, then you don't have to." And he's like, "Yeah, but it'll ruin the story." And I was like, "No, it won't, because I'm enough to make you go and do this. If I need you to go and do a mission, I will make you go and do the mission." And I don't mean like, oh, God tells you to do it, so you do it. I mean, I will manipulate the world around you in such a way as Bodger would make the choice to go and do the thing. And so he's like, okay then. And hopefully you see that in one of the first couple of episodes. You see that I give Bodger a bit of an ultimatum that forces him to go and do the mission that I need him to. My dad's just on holiday with Dragon's dad. Yeah, that's all it is. Immersion is the key. That's right. Do you plan on being in any of your skits? It's not my plans, Holy Heretic. That's for them to decide. They know that they can have me if they want me. Ooh, mate. So no large spiders, all getting shot with arrows. Low, all 8 eyes. Yeah. It's like a multi-shot. There is actually a spell in D&D, Jeanette. There's a spell called Barrage. Conjure Barrage, that's what it's called, and it's like a ranger spell that you can cast it as you fire an arrow, and then the arrow splits into multiple arrows. So if you cast that, then maybe you could stab the spiders through all 8 eyes. You're so knowledgeable, Rob. Thanks. I'm just good at blagging. I've got a proficiency in deception. The longer I stay here, the more I'm impressed with him. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Because life indeed. I'm still here, loving this stream. Oh, good. You're all still here. I'm glad that this has turned into something useful. I was ready to call it off, but you've all seemed to enjoy my ramblings. What do you like as a DM? Wondering because maybe you have the experience. Oh yeah, let's get the first-hand experience from FBGX. Do you guys know? Do you know, guys, why I cannot choose worst vid quality? It's a bit lagging, to be honest. Oh, I'm sorry, Elminster. I think part of that is because I'm forced to do this on a laptop and I don't have a gaming PC or anything. I don't have a desktop, and I think that might be to do with it. So sorry, not much I can do with it. I have dropped my bit rate right down so that hopefully would do something, but I remember you mentioning that in Ben's stream. I'm not sure what you're referring to because I'm so far behind the chat there, Ajo, but I'm glad you think it's awesome. So many things. I'm gonna have to read this just for my own ego here, guys. I'm gonna have to read what FBGX likes about me as a DM. Like a passion with role-playing NPCs. I do love role-playing. I think that's another reason why I decided that it was okay for me to go back to do academics at university and not pursue acting like actively anymore. Was because I was still getting this I was still scratching that itch, that creative kind of itch that I enjoyed acting for. I still get that through DMing. I can put on a story, and I can put on characters, and I can still test out silly voices and things, and I can still put my acting training to use. Like I literally do vocal warm-ups that I was taught to do at university and stuff. And I get the acting itch from that. The acting itch is scratched because of that. There's a lot of effort and thought into the world and the lore around it. If at any point we, the party, seem a bit lost or fumbling, it just rolls with it, makes everything seem seamless, and it keeps the interest going. That's because of the work that you put in the background. If you don't have to put in any work as a DM, but the more work you put in, the more it's usually appreciated. There are DMs who just improvise everything on the spot, and I've tried that before. Sometimes I'm forced to do that, but I prefer to have things planned out. It sounds amazing. It was amazing. I really loved it. For this year, before lockdown and everything, I was thinking, what can I do as a follow-up to that? Obviously, 31's not quite as special in the decimal system as 30 is, but it's still a birthday. It's still going to be fun. So I was going to actually do some sort of mini painting day or something. I was going to get Mike Spidey to teach me some painting techniques. I was going to get all of my characters printed out, 3D printed, and then we can have a day of painting our own characters the way that we see them or something. That was going to be fun, but instead we had to do a Zoom quiz. I got a bunch of my friends to have put together some questions for a quiz, and we all made a quiz out of it, like a pub quiz. FBGX, I was still so good at stealthies. I don't think you're the winner. You did have quite a few, but I don't think you were a winner. I know Joel got a bunch. Joel got like thousands. Settings. One of the constitution, one of the things to test constitution was a breath holding test, and so it was like an honesty system. So you started the stopwatch on your own phone, and then held your breath and close your eyes, whatever, and then when you stop it, and then just wait for everybody to be over. Excuse me. You wait for everybody to be over, and then we rank everybody, and the person who held their breath longest gets a point towards Constitution or whatever. And Joel and I were the last two standing. I think I held my breath for about 3 minutes. He went about almost 4. But what I didn't realize was because I was closing my eyes to reduce stimulus to my brain so that my brain wouldn't use as much oxygen and I could last longer, I was just sitting there. Oh, and I also had my hand over my pocket because I knew that a lot of people would try and use the opportunity to finally pickpocket me. But I had my hand over my pocket. It's almost like I was giving a pledge of allegiance. I was just holding my breath. And then I realized after the fact, I bet a bunch of people got a photo stealthy with me right then. And sure enough, when I got them at the end of the day, there was a bunch of stealthies of me and Joel with their hands. It's exactly as we see him in the videos. Kind of need to point them out. I'm sure I like reading it. I did like reading it. It's good to know when my work gets appreciated. Constitution drink was so gross. Yeah. To do it again, Rob. Life stats. Yes. We need to practice your handstands. That's fun. My fiance is a ballet dancer and also a physiotherapist now. And so her handstands was amazing. Like that was a mark towards the dexterity. Like my mum couldn't even get her feet off the ground. 60-something-year-old lady now, and she couldn't do a handstand. And then on the other end of the scale, Lizzie's doing like she was just still going after like 2 minutes, and we were like, all right, you can come down now. You've got full marks. Excuse me, sorry. Use those stats in a real campaign. Yeah, I was talking about maybe doing that for a future birthday, like putting together a one-shot where you are all actually playing yourself with the stats that you got on my 30th. Have you already filmed number 4? Sandboxes are funner for a DM. Yeah, I mean they both have their points. Like I enjoy both. I enjoy the hecticness. I saw somebody in the comments for the isolation games say something like, "Oh, poor Rob. He was trying so hard to hint to them that they shouldn't go to Wraith anymore because it's already destroyed and there's no point going there." But they just weren't listening. And I said, well, actually, the real trick is getting them to think you don't want them to go there and manipulating them to actually go there. Because my plan was to get them to go to Wraith all along, and I wanted them to think it was their idea, against my wishes, effectively. And so they're going exactly the direction I want them to go, and that's another fun thing. So I agree, Holy Heretic, that sandboxes are fun. They're very fun. I can just world build, and then it takes less preparation. In a strange way, I create an entire world, but it feels like less preparation, because all I'm doing is creating the world and what's going on in it, and then the story is actually made by them as they walk through the world. They see the story and they put it together. But I also get a lot of fun from railroad campaigns where I come up with the plot, so to speak, and then I sort of work backwards and think, all right, if this is where they need to end up at the end of episode 4, where do they need to be at the start of episode 4? And from there, where do they need to be? What sort of clues do I need to pepper in along the way? And then after each episode, I have to say, oh, well, they didn't pick up on that clue, so I need to give them that again next episode. Or I need to push that a little bit harder next episode. Or I need to find a different way to get them onto the railroad that I need them to be on and stuff. So, for instance, just as a small thing, it's not really giving anything away, but the track they're about to go into, original ones before we started playing any of it, was in episode 2. So they're like 3 episodes behind what I expect to be at. And I have manipulated things in different ways to get them to where they need to be at the end of next episode, hopefully. Sandbox is really tough for newbies. We were so concerned about what was allowed to do. We didn't do anything imaginative. Yeah, that's the problem with new people. You don't necessarily want to go to Sandbox with people who've never played before, because they'll just sit there watching you as the DM and saying, like, so what happens now? You have to give them something to go on. I find that railroading them for the first while, and then eventually just letting those railroads go deeper and deeper into the sand until eventually they're not even on the railroads anymore and they're just in a sandbox. Because by then they're invested in their characters' backstories. You've introduced them to a bunch of NPCs that they care about. It's much easier to get them to manipulate them to do something by then, because you can just threaten one of the NPCs they care about, and then they'll they have to go here to save that person or whatever. So they've got more invested in the world, and so they can start to sandbox more. Like to be railroaded, that's right. It's been really great. Your ramblings are fun. I'm really enjoying this. Thank you very much. It's a prime birthday. Fancy unicorn. I knew you'd pick up on that. The other math nerds in the chat would pick up on that. I said that to I'm working on a math project with one of my lecturers at the moment, as like a teaching assistant kind of thing. And I mentioned to him that I'm turning 31 and it's not quite as important as 30, and he goes, yeah, but it's prime. And I was like, yeah, I knew you'd appreciate that. So love bloody math nerds. Sandbox is hard for an inexperienced player. My DM once told us we arrived at a medium-large human city of population 10k, and that was it. Knowing where we should go, how we should go about continuing our story. That can be fun, Leah. If you're already kind of an actor kind of type, I would love that, because I'd just be like, right, what does my character want to do right now? What is his goal? In my inventory, I've got that he's got wood carving tools, so he probably wood carves as his pastime. So I would just say to the DM, all right, I'm going to go to find a market where I can find some nice wood, or I'm going to is there an outskirts where there's a logging camp that I can go and get some free wood, and then that might lead to something else. Or I'd say, if I get to a town and I'm like, I got hurt pretty bad in that last fight, I'm going to go and see if I can find a place where I can buy healing potions, or a place where I can buy some better armor, and then I think about what's the character been doing recently and what are they intending to do later. Maybe they've got a romance that they're trying to blossom with an NPC back in their hometown, and so I would go, okay, my character wants to go shopping. because he wants to buy a rose for his boyfriend or whatever. Excuse me, sorry. Yeah, but I know that it is difficult, especially if you're not used to storytelling, if you've not got an acting background or an improvisation background, if you've not got a writing background, things like that, then it can be hard to be like, so where's the actual story? We were just in a city, there's nothing to do. I remember one DM told me about Warhammer sessions where players went to the market. Most of them were looking for new weapons and armor, but one guy didn't. When the DM asked him what he wanted to buy, he said an apple. From this day, GM was so impressed with one guy's role playing by buying just an apple. He started to push players to buy an each at the market. Excellent, yeah. It can get a little bit too. That's another thing you've got to. That's another thing you've got to read in your players. Is are they the kind of players who want to role play every moment of the day, where they'll just have long sessions of talking and chatting around a campfire and discussing their next tactic and stuff, i.e. FBGX's campaign. We can go an entire session with no encounters, so to speak, and it's phenomenal for me. It's so wonderful to watch them playing off each other. When I'm discussing something with one of the characters because it's something that they would know, the other guys don't just sit there and wait for their turn or wait for me to talk to them. They'll talk to each other in character. They'll discuss plans and they'll be like, "Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. What's been going on with you? We haven't caught up lately." And it's so enjoyable. And so some players and DMs won't want to go over the minutiae of how many rations have you got. You said you. Oh, hello. Profanity. You don't want a profanity in this chat. Thank you very. Oh, but your profanity. That's good. Thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, it might you don't want to be like, oh, you said you lit a torch. How many torches have you lit now? I don't know. Some players love that. Some DMs love that. Sometimes it's necessary. Like if you're going deep underground and you're not gonna come back out for months to get to the nearest town, then maybe you want to start tracking rations and things because it's going to add to the survival aspect of the game. Excuse me. Some Erinesk. That sounds familiar. Maybe I've just seen you in the Discord. Thank you for the follow, Erinesk. So you don't want to force people to buy and eat food and keep track of that if that's not the game they want to play, but it can be a fun aspect. And it can also sort of trick the mind into thinking about the actual role play and thinking of it as a story that you're collaboratively telling together and not a game that you're playing to win. That's one of the major, actually I should have probably said that right at the start. One of the major things that I say about D&D and people who want to get into it is that it is collaborative storytelling. It is not role. It's a role-playing game, but I don't like using the word game in it because game already conjures images of winning, and there's no way to win D&D. There's no winning conditions. It doesn't end. It just eventually lives get in the way and you stop playing forever. But it's storytelling. You stop playing when you've stopped telling the story, when you've gotten to a point where it's wrapped up nicely and you want to start telling different stories with different characters. And so if you think about it as collaborative storytelling, it'll take you a lot further than thinking about it as a game. That's genius. Being a DM sounds really fun. Yeah. The reverse DM psychology is now DMH. Yeah. You don't want to get into, unless it's a bad DM, want to get into the oh, we can't say plans out loud, but he's going to use it against us. Because that's where the collaborative part of collaborative storytelling comes in. The DM, because it's not a game, it's not the DM versus you, unless it's an inexperienced DM. A lot of DMs start out like that. You're not playing against your characters. Your players rather. You're not trying to kill them. You're not trying to ruin their plans, unless it's for the purposes of adding to the story and telling a more interesting story. But listen to their plans and think, oh yeah, that sounds like they've put a lot of thought into this. So it wasn't how I intended them to solve this puzzle, but I'll allow it to work. For a concrete example of that, one of the games that I was playing for Mike's colleagues, they were in it was a tower heist effectively in a wizard's tower. They had to work their way through the floors of this wizard's tower and get their loot at the end. And on one of the floors, there was a statue they came across that was a Goliath holding the hand of a human, holding the hand of a dwarf, holding the hand of a hobbit, halfling. In my world, they're called hobbits, and halflings are a racial slur. And the Goliath had a gem in his hand. And I knew that the rogue type character would want to steal it. So of course he runs over and he grabs the gem. And I described the Goliath's mouth opening, and a bunch of like seeds and kibble falls out. And he's like, "That's weird. That's a weird trap." And then the front of the statues, the base of the statue, the front of it opens up, and a bunch of small critters will run out to like eat the kibble and the bird seed and stuff. There was like a spider and a lizard and a rat, a scorpion, something like that. And he thinks that's weird. And then he looks back to take the stone out of the hand, and he realizes the hand is now above him, and it's a lot bigger. And it's getting bigger and further up as it goes. And he looks down and realizes he's shrinking, as is the rest of his party in the room, and they're all shrinking. And they all shrunk down to tiny little sizes until the spider now had the stats of a giant spider, and the lizard had the stats of a crocodile, and the scorpion had a giant scorpion stats, and blah, blah, blah. And they had to fight these things and be like, "Oh God, how do we get it back up to?" And so I had in mind that they would just like smash the stone or whatever. But then one of them says, one of them was not on the floor when it happened. So when he comes up, he's like, "Oh God, my friends are nowhere to be found." I had him roll a perception check to see if he'd noticed them as tiny little people. And he didn't. So he was like, "What's going on?" But eventually when he realized what was happening, he stepped on all the spiders or whatever and saved them. And then he wasn't sure how to fix it. But they were talking it through between themselves, and he said, "Oh, if I use my mage hand, which is like a hand that's extended from you, it's not actually a part of you, it's like a magic hand. If I use that to pull it up, to pick up the gem and put it in the hand of the hobbit on the other end of the height spectrum of the statues, then that should reverse the whole thing." And I was sitting there thinking, that's way better than the puzzle I'd created. Yeah, that's going to work. And so he pulls it out and he moves it along, and as he moves it along, the Goliath's hand goes back to his side and the hobbit's hand comes up, and he puts it in the hand, and he's like, "Yeah, I worked it out." And he gets the joy of thinking, "I worked that out, I solved the puzzle." And I get the joy of going, I get the benefit of him thinking I came up with such a good puzzle. So yeah, it's great. The reverse psychology can be a pain, but it can go in your benefit too. This character's name was also Eighth, because he was eighth son of his father. Nice. I love that as soon as they had a plague, they were all for going. Yeah, I knew they would be. That's why I had the eunuch there. With the clues we have, can Barb be Zaza's estranged stepmom? Well, let's see what we've got. So Tracy thinks that Zaza's stepmom might be Barb. So we know that in, maybe you guys don't know that. What do you guys know? The characters know, and I'm happy for you to know it as well, because the characters know it, that Zaza is 86 years old. So as an elf, he's not yet reached 100, which is when they usually are considered adult. So he's still basically a child. He's 86 years old, and and Barb has been conscious for 35 years. 35 years ago, she woke up on the deck of a ship, and she was literally the only person on the ship. She was adrift in the middle of the ocean. She didn't know why. She had no memories of who she was or anything like that. And then she got intercepted by pirates who took her on board as part of the crew. She pirated with them for like 30 years, and then she was tossed in a storm and woke up on the shore, and has been wandering the land for the last 5 years. So tieflings usually only live to about human age, maybe 80, maybe 100 if there's something like magical going on with them or something. But it's up to you really. His father, Zaza's father, Duke Derek, is I think in his late 200s, somewhere around. So make your own mind up. I'm not saying either way. Like Lulu, threatened and killed. That was fun. I can say I didn't intend to kill Lulu from the start. That was just how it played out. Like I was not against killing Lulu, because what's her name? Zariel. Zariel is a actually I have to detach my microphone if I go and grab Zariel. But she's sitting right over there. She's an archdevil. She's like the epitome of evil, and she would kill her once friend in order to get to these bastards who are taking her prize, her chained planet. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about the Descent into Avernus campaign on the VLDL YouTube channel. Do I know Hamish and does he tabletop? I don't know Hamish personally. I've met him once or twice at like actor events, like 48 Hour Festival and stuff. But I don't know him personally. I've seen him around, and I don't know if he tabletops. It would be fun to have him on though. He seems like a very fun guy. His little Chocky Bicky thing, that skit about going into the mountains and studying for years to learn the holy light, and then you just press C, and he's all sheepish about it. Guys, it has me in stitches. Guest appearance. Yeah, do you know how hard it is to run 5 people? to run 6 is Remember how you killed the NPC in the hellish environment and the VLDL players were devastated? I did, yes. Which is good because it shows the DM that they were truly invested in this character, which is great. They were invested in the story that I'd created. How does one handle how to handle one experienced gamer in a party of new players? It's a good question, Holy Heretic. If there's one player who's experienced and they truly are experienced, then they should know that the DM has got a hard time with a lot of new players, and they should offer the DM do you want me to help with rules things? If something comes up, do you want me to help and stuff? So I would usually ask if that's a problem for me, and I find that the session is being slowed down a lot. Oh bloody hell, it's midnight. If the session's being slowed down a lot, then I would say, hey, you've played a lot before. Can you just help out when there's like, if I ask for a Constitution check, can you just point to their sheet and say it's there? Stuff like that. If it's who likes more of like a gamer and wants to win, then you can find off things about the characters that wants to defend, perhaps. Like I throw some goblins at them, and I know goblins have only got 7 hit points, and it's not a question of experience; it's a question of metagaming and how do you handle metagaming, which again is just open to different. It's open to different interpretation. Some DMs, I'd say in my experience, most DMs don't like metagaming. They don't like you thinking. For those of you who don't know, I should explain. Metagaming is when you are thinking about the game as a game, and you're considering things that your character wouldn't be considering. For instance, as a good example, in the first episode of the Isolation games, when Adam was doing some quick mental maths to work out what the health of the Zvats was, from what I'd told him, like, I've done 7 damage to this one, and that killed him. So I'd done 11 damage and it killed him, so he must have 11 or less. Then I did 2 damage to this one, so it was already wounded, and I did 4 more, so that means that it must have 6. Blah, blah, blah. That's called metagaming, and in certain situations it's fine, and others it's frowned upon. But some DMs are completely fine with it. They actually encourage it sometimes because, and I understand this argument and somewhat agree with it, that we don't play out every minute of every day of these characters. And so the characters do live lives that we don't actually explore. And when you're traveling, like if you're traveling from one city to another, and I say as the DM, okay, you travel for 5 hours and then you blow. I've just said it in like 2 seconds, but the characters have lived it for 5 hours. So what are they talking about amongst themselves for those 5 hours? Maybe they're talking about, next time we're in a battle, you should go up the front because you're tanky, and I should stay at the back because I'm squishy. And hey, when you shot that guy with the magic missile before, it was really effective. Make sure that you do. And so when the next fight happens, and the players are saying, hey, Greg, go up the front and blah blah blah. Greg's, for example, I meant to just pick a name out of my head, but I ended up picking a VLDL. And Gary, go up the front because your character's really beefy and blah blah blah. That can be misconstrued metagaming. So just as easily think as like, no, that's something your characters would actually know about in the moment. And to relate it more back to sort of the Zvat situation with the health points, if it's a monster that the character, if it's like a fairly common monster like goblins and dragons and Zvats and stuff, then in that world there would be lore told about those monsters. Because think about in the real world, right? We don't actually have vampires and werewolves and dragons and whatever. But if I asked all of you guys now, what would you do if there was a vampire a vampire outbreak in your town? You'd probably all say, get some garlic, get some crosses. Don't invite them in the house because they're not allowed in without. They can't use mirrors because they reflect. We all know things about these monsters that are somewhat universal, even in a world where we don't actually have them. So in a world where those monsters are real and they actually exist, there would be stories told about them. People would know that, hey, if you ever meet a Zvat, they're pretty bloody weak. Just kick it in the face until it's dead. Like, and so I do allow some metagaming to go by because characters would know things about the monster. Sorry about your loss. Cam, go home. That was both infuriating and hilarious at the same time when they started chanting that, and I was like trying to get words in edgeways, and they were just like, "Sorry about your loss. Can we go home?" And I was like, "All right, I'm gonna let this go because it's funny as well." Sorry, my language. Memories. Hey, good morning, Erenesk. Hello, too soon. Hey, hello, profanity. Rob is my favourite. I'm so happy you're streaming too now. Thank you, Profanity. I appreciate the support. I'm happy I'm streaming too, and I hope to achieve my whatever they call it, not partnership, the other one, affiliate. Legendary chat. How are you going, Erin? Love collaborative storytelling. Win condition. Having fun is the win condition. Yeah. If you had fun at the end of the session, you've won the game for that session. How many familiar names here? You're doing well. I can just take a pause from the chat just to say, once again, I've said it a lot, I'm sure, but I really appreciate the support you guys are showing me. I was preparing for today's session thinking, expect like 5 people. Like, don't be disappointed if it's single digits, because it's not everybody's cup of tea. Most people, I imagine, would watch the videos we make for the guys, for the VLDL guys, and the banter that they have, and the funny sort of quips and jokes that they make. They don't watch it for me. If I'm the only attraction that they're going to watch on screen, you're going to have a few people who are interested. But I'm genuinely like touched. I'm really warmed by your support. Palogics. Hello, Rob. I actually had an amazing idea for like a movie series, but it's kind of brutal, so don't keep reading. I thought it just ended there, so don't keep reading. Okay. If you are sensitive to explicit content, I'm all good with explicit content. Just ask FBGX what happened when they fought the hags. Ooh, that was gruesomely described. So what about a movie series where there is only a dark room and a table, people playing D&D? People die in the game, they die in the same in the chair. Last person standing wins, aside from the DM. That would be an interesting thing to do. You definitely wouldn't want to play Tomb of Horrors, Tomb of Annihilations. There's a module that's I should explain modules real quick. In D&D, there's kind of, you can make up your own stuff, just make up an entire world. But if that's too daunting, if you don't feel like you've got the creativity or the time to do it, you can you can just follow a module. Oh, so this is the one that I'm playing with the kids on a Sunday, the special needs kids. Dragons by Spy Pete. It's a module that was it's a very short one. It's designed to be easy. It's part of what's called the Essentials kit, and it's designed to be played by people who've never played it before. So this is another avenue to get into D&D that I should have probably explained back when I was talking about that. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place. But this is great because it kind of just walks you through it step at a time, and it tells you this is the NPC and this is his name and this is where he lives, and if the characters ask him to do this, then this is his response, kind of thing. So it does all of the hard work for you. So there's a module like this that people can run, and I think it's called Tomb of Annihilation. I've never run them because I tend to just make up my own games. I don't tend to run modules too much. But the Tomb of Annihilation is designed to be explicitly difficult. It's an unbelievably hard to survive it. Everybody dies like very quickly, and it's the sort of game where you just have to have like 3 different characters in your backups, because your first character will die, and then your second character will probably die as well. So you wouldn't want to play that. Oh, hello. Hey, Rizam. Nice to see you there. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, people die in game. They die in real life. It's like the Matrix, but with D&D. That would make a good short film. I can't imagine it would go much more than a short film. Like it wouldn't. The idea alone doesn't seem like it would stretch, but maybe it would. Maybe the if you sort of explored the actual game and almost in yeah, if you had the characters kind of like playing out their own characters as they're actually doing the game and they're putting themselves in that situation, then maybe it would work. It feels almost like an episode of something. Oh, that's probably why it feels like an episode of something. In the original Star Trek series, I think there's a game where they no, it's not the original. So it's in Deep Space Nine. In Deep Space Nine, there's an episode that's widely discredited as any worth watching, and I kind of agree. Where they get sucked into like a gambling machine or something, and they have to like walk through this like dungeon-esque maze to get out again. If they die in real life, they die in the game, vice versa. It already exists. That's the sign of a good script, is if you put it out there and it already exists. I had an idea the other day, came to me when the kids were fighting a dragon. I was like, oh, I can imagine a great comic book. I can imagine a great comic strip where there's like a fire-breathing dragon who's trying to blow the candles out on his birthday cake, and it's just relighting them. And I was like, haha, that's funny. And I sent it to Mike and said, wouldn't this be a good idea? And then after I sent it, I was like, I bet that exists. And so I Googled like dragon candles cake, and there's like 100 comic strips of it. There's no original thoughts in the world. Apologies. I've definitely seen something like that. Blah, blah, blah. It's clever. Nice wrap. I'm guessing Barb didn't ask about the design of the ship she woke up in. No, she did not. Could have learned if it was elven made and such. She could. That is a boat. Oh, that probably wouldn't work then. They were long-lived. Hamish is apparently crazy good at improviser too. I would imagine he would be. A lot of the funniest things I've seen of Hamish seem to be like the sort of thing where you're like, I bet that was improvised. You're so far behind talking about Barb beans as a stepmom. I know, man. You guys are asking such good things, and I go on tangents. I come from my dad, and my dad can talk for England. He loves his voice, and I get that from him. So I'm sorry, I talk a lot. But thank you. If anybody's well, 32 people still here. That's crazy. I can't be up all night. I should probably wrap it up at a point. So happy I found the stream. Good D&D talk and on NZ time. Truly a blessed night in lockdown. Are you Kiwi as well, Valaros? Guilty of metagaming. Feel bad, man. Yes, game explanation and experience gamers should, but never seem to help players. Kick it in the face till it's dead. That's brilliant. Get that on a t-shirt. Kick it in the face till it's dead. I just like that. I like the idea of that's like the manual of how to deal with monsters. If it's a vampire, get some garlic. If it's a werewolf, use a silvered sword. Blah blah blah. If it's a Zvart, kick it in the face till it's dead. No problem. Shouldn't people wait to stream half of D&D was to watch you. You were awesome at it. Thank you very much, Profanity. Flips from FBGX. We're all happy you decided to stream. Don't be so hard on yourself. VLDL stayed for Rob. Man, you guys are awesome. No, hags, no. If you don't tell them about the hags, I will. Tomb of Annihilation. Is that what I said? I think so. Keen on listening to the logic in D&D. I'm back. Had to pop out. Well, glad to have you back, Aftermath. You're probably gone again for all I know. I'm eventually going to catch up. Honestly, we were so happy that you're streaming. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me. At least for me, I'm getting all the ego boosting, and you're not getting anything out of it other than talking to this dude. How do you deal with an inexperienced DM? Not saying you. I'm glad you clarified, Holy Heretic. If you're experiencing an inexperienced DM, oh hello, I've got a big wetter walking through the carriage. A wetter's kind of like a cricket. If they're just inexperienced, it depends what aspect of their inexperience is troubling. Is it that they don't know the rules of the game? In which case, that's an easy fix. You just tell them, preferably not in the moment, unless it's like something that's going to seriously affect your character, like you might die because they don't understand how this damage system works or whatever, then tell them in the moment. But if it's something that can wait, then just make a note of it, kind of like I was saying to do with the DM earlier. Just make a note and say, I'll talk to them about this later. And then afterwards say, just wanted to point out this. This is actually my interpretation of the rule. Maybe you're understanding it incorrectly as well, and so you have a dialogue. Whatever. If it's an experienced DM who just doesn't know how to tell a story, that's harder to deal with. It can be confronting to tell them that you're not getting enjoyment out of the story because you're not getting enough detail. I would always couch it. You've heard of compliment sandwiches, I'm sure. You tell them something you're enjoying about the game. You tell them something that you feel like they could improve on to help you enjoy more about the game, and then you tell them something else that you enjoy about the game. Compliment sandwiches help the filling go down a bit. There's really little I can advise on that situation, really. It depends on what you mean by an inexperienced DM. Sorry. Well, I'm really enjoying this. I agree. You have to sleep at some stage. I do. I'll turn myself away from the stream, and I got to study. Sorry, Cave Squonk. I will, for your benefit, cut the thing off. I tell you what, it's 22 now. I'll give it till 1:45, so I'll give it 6 more minutes, and then I'll cut it off. So eventually, I need to go to bed. Sorry, and then I'll probably be doing another stream at some point for the American people who can't come because they're busy or whatever. Thanks so much for Europe friendly time too. Been loving it. Says girl, I should be in bed. The magic is so strong. How your maths exams, by the way, not great. It's really hard to study at home. I've got good grades up until now. My GPA is 7 point something. I usually get A's and A pluses, A minuses usually. But yeah, this semester is going to be a tough one. Not only because I've got much more focus on D&D. I'm loving this stuff and trying to make it so that I can do this as a career. But also, it's hard to study at home. Good time for me too in the US. I'm up early anyways. You've been fun. Thank you, Real Kalira. I'm 2 hours late for lunch. No regrets. You can photosynthesize. Delay as real, but it's doable. Anything out of it. It's really thinking that. Anything out of it. Hey, I must be catching up. I didn't say that too long ago. Yeah, I mean, getting too much. I'm Swiss. Oh, Swiss. I've got good friends in Switzerland, Valaros. My mum and dad had real good close friends before we were even born, and then we've been friends ever since. My partner and I stayed with them in Switzerland when we went traveling a few years ago. Whereabouts in Switzerland are you? I think they're in. Let me get this right. Oh boy. It's been so long since we visited now. I know I'm all over the place. Was it Bern? They're in Bern, yeah. We see just how passionate you are about the game. Good, I'm glad that comes through. Love your diplomatic responses. I'm not sure what I was being diplomatic about, but I try. Those are answers only an experienced DM knows. Oh my god, it's my fault. Sava. Victorious Lily, maybe. Thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate your support. It's a criticism sandwich with compliment bread. That's right. Criticism sandwich, compliment bread. I mean cave. Because if it was a compliment sandwich, then it's just 3 compliments in a row, which is always nice to have. But it's a bit like white bread. It's not good to have too much. Makes your head too big. He does need the sleep. Also, he will return. Yeah, I'm not dying, hopefully. Don't leave them wanting more. Good questions. The answers were fantastic. It helps to have different space to work, study, so you can separate private life. Yeah, it does. Currently, my studio and a recording studio and a laundry. My lounges, kitchen, and all the rest of it. You're all going through the same thing, I'm sure. From home, I have same issues, and oh my god, I've caught up to chat. Thanks for playing online. There are, yes. So if you the thing that we're using for isolation games is called Roll20, ROLL20, and it's one of the main 2. The other one being Fantasy Grounds. I don't know much about Fantasy Grounds. I didn't know much about Roll20 until we started this. I just picked one and went with it because I was like, they're both going to offer similar things, and I just couldn't. I would have got what do they call it? Analysis paralysis. If I'd have gone into like, oh, which one's better to use? So I just picked one. I've heard people touting the I'm getting tired now. The espousing the benefits of both. So pick Fantasy Grounds or Roll20, or maybe there's another one out there, and go on there and you can search for games that are willing to accept new players or other players. Hey Rob, you know, I already want to write a little message. I really appreciate your experience, time, and effort you put into the VLVL community. I think I speak on behalf of all of us that we really like having you. If you do another stream, I'm going to try and catch something to you. So kind, sweet. I really appreciate that. I really do. That's can't leave it on a better note than that. So it really touches me that you guys would want to listen to me talk about D&D. I've got 1,000 more things I could talk about it. I will definitely be doing this again. Hopefully I can get the other stuff to work so that I can do the things that I'd planned to do. But otherwise, we can have another Q&A session. How do we know when you'll be streaming? I don't know really. I'll decide when it fits around my my study schedule, and then I'll spam it everywhere in the same way that you knew about it today. I guess following me is a good idea. Subscribing on here, there, and everywhere is a good idea. All of these things over here. Subscribing on my YouTube, following me on the Instagram. I'll spam it everywhere. Ever thought about a podcast about DMing? There's a lot of DM podcasts that are really good as well. The Dungeon Cast deserves a shout out as well because I love them a lot as well. All right, I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you very much for coming to speak with me, guys. You're all lovely. I really enjoy your support, and we'll see you next time.